You go. Good morning, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. Don't yell at us too much today. It's Valentine's Day. Keep that in mind, okay? It's all about love, okay? All right? Keep that in mind when you come to the podium.
As it should be.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with the invocation and pledge.
The invocation today by Reverend Rex Child, First Presbyterian Church, Naples.
Morning. In light of Valentine's Day, my invocation prayer is based on love. So,
Thank God.
Following that theme, yes, let's pray. O God, on this day, we especially give thanks for love. We celebrate the love we have with significant others, but may it also be a celebration of all forms of love. The love we have for our families, the family we're born into, as well as the family we choose. Help us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Teach us to love the poor and needy, the stranger and the outcast, or anyone in distress. Give us the courage to love even our enemies, for as the Reverend Dr. King said, love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend. Let love inform the way we speak to one another, and may love guide the board in its decisions today and all days. Most of all, O God, help us to remember that you love each and every one of us, and that nothing can separate us from your love. Amen.
I'd like Diane Van Paris from our community, very strong advocate and patriot, to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'll take you through today's agenda changes before we move on for any further changes. First, move item 16K8 to 12A. It's a recommendation to, one, direct staff to provide written notice of a Burt Harris claim received in connection with the Riviera Golf Course conversion application to owners of real property contiguous to the owner's property pursuant to Florida Statute Section 70.001, parens 4, parens A, known as the Burt J. Harris Jr. Private Property Rights Protection Act. 2, direct the county manager to negotiate a settlement of the Burt Harris claim, which may include a pre-suit mediation conference, and return to the board for consideration of the settlement. 3, direct staff to issue a written statement of allowable uses identifying the allowable uses to which the subject property may be put pursuant to Florida Statute Section 70.001, parens 5, parens A. And 4, direct staff to prepare an LDC amendment of Section 5.05.15, conversion of golf courses, to minimize the future litigation in connection with golf course conversion process. This is being moved to the regular agenda by all 5 commissioners at separate requests. Not on your change sheet, we do have one misplaced item for correction here. Item 16J1. Miscellaneous correspondence is misplaced. Its correct placement is 16I1. We have a couple of agenda notes. Items 9A and 9B should be identified as all districts rather than District 2. Item 10A, clarification. The grant reimbursement will not include the $166,991.91 expended plus the pending expenses already incurred and in process for payment. Time certain items today. Items 10A and 11A are companion items to be heard at 9:30 a.m. This is the COVID-19 Extra Mile Migrant Farm Worker Community Grant. And items 9A and 9B, companion items to be heard at 10 o'clock a.m. This is the Collier County Behavioral Health Center PUDZ and GMPA. Just as a reminder, we have court reporter breaks set for 10:30 and 2:50, and we'll be taking a moment of silence at 10:17. In remembrance of the Parkland issue. That is all I have.
Just one point of clarification, just for detail on the change sheet, when it says 9A and 9B should be identified as all districts rather than the District 2. My agenda shows that it actually says District 3. So just maybe, unless I'm missing something, but
Yes.
just for clarification.
So it should have been District 3 if we were saying it was only for the district.
Right.
But it was incorrectly districted and also really is not a district-specific issue. It's a all districts.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Okay.
County Attorney?
Let's see.
Nothing, thank you.
I guess do I have a motion to approve? Yeah.
Any further changes?
Anything?
And ex parte?
Do ex parte.
Okay.
Adjustments.
So I'll start with Commissioner Cole. Do you have any changes to the agenda or
No,
any ex parte or disclosures?
nothing for consent.
Commissioner Saunders?
I don't have any disclosure, but I have 4 items on the agenda, 10C through 10F. 10C, I've spoken with the clerk, and I am going to ask that to be continued after we have some discussion on it. So I just wanted to let the public know and the board know that 10C, I'm not going to be asking for any action by the commission, but I will be asking that be delayed when it comes up.
Okay.
No other changes, no changes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Hall, anything you have?
I have 10A, and there was one thing about the tax money that has already been used, 166,000. I don't wish to send that back.
Yep, I just made that correction for you.
Okay, good.
Commissioner McDaniel?
Yeah, no, I'm not thinking that required ex parte either, by the way, but I have no ex parte on the consent and/or no additional adjustments.
Okay, and neither do I. I have no changes or adjustments, so I guess we accept the agenda as is.
With the changes? Yes, sir.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay, so moved.
Item 2B is the BCC meeting minutes for January 10th, 2023.
Make a motion
Okay.
for approval.
Okay, motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously.
We have one employee award. Is Christina here? She's not listed on the agenda. Okay. We have one employee award that is not showing up here under 3A, but is on my list. Christina, 20 years with Christina Perez, Program Manager, Bay Shore Gateway Triangle CRA.
There we go. Oh, there she is.
There she is. Nope.
No?
No, she isn't. That's Maggie. Nope. Okay, we'll move along.
Good job, Christina.
Yeah, good job, Christina.
We love you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Maybe she can visit us at the next agenda.
Did she not?
All right. I don't know. Item 4 is proclamations. Item 4A is a proclamation designating February 18th, 2023 as Naples Lions Club Day in Collier County to be accepted by Austin Robbie, President of the Naples Lion Club, and other distinguished guests. Yeah. Come forward. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, thank you.
We're in the best and everything. I love it.
Good day for us. Take care. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Front and center for the picture.
Let's put you in the middle.
Put the rose between 2 thorns. No, not you.
Sir, would you like to say a few words about the Lions Club? Okay.
Austin nominated me because I'm at level with the with the mic as opposed to him. So thank you very much, everyone. We're so appreciative for the proclamation. My name is Kathy Heldman. I'm a recent Lion addition, and I couldn't be more fortunate to be part of an organization that serves many, many low-income families in Collier County. We literally help them see and hear by providing free programs for eye screening, ear screening, free eyeglasses, free hearing aids, along with educational scholarships for individuals to go into the medical community and continue to serve our community. So thank you so much for your recognition this day. We're very appreciative. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day.
Item 4B is a proclamation designating February 19th through 25th, 2023 as Engineers Week in Collier County, to be accepted by Kevin Dowdy, past president, Florida Engineering Society, Calusa Chapter, and other distinguished guests.
All of us? Great.
Did you see the engineers, how they all moved perfectly in unison? Did you see that? I don't know if anybody caught that. It's very impressive.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. This week we celebrate Engineers Week. National Engineers Week was originally founded in 1951 by the National Society of Professional Engineers. It is always celebrated at the time of George Washington's birthday in February in honor of the first president's background as an engineer and land surveyor. Engineers apply scientific and technical skills to the advancement and betterment of human welfare. Engineers are dedicated to ensuring a diverse, vigorous, and well-educated workforce by increasing interest in engineering and technology-oriented careers. Through the field, we encourage our young math and science students to realize the practical power of their knowledge. National Engineers Week is dedicated to increasing understanding and motivating youth to pursue engineering and technology careers to support the future engineering workforce. On behalf of the Florida Engineering Society, the rest of the board, and our membership, I would like to say thank you for recognition of the field of engineering and supporting engineers as we celebrate Engineers Week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, can we get a motion to accept the proclamations, please?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item 5, presentations. 5A is a presentation of the Collier County Business of the Month for February 2023 to New Horizons of Southwest Florida. The award will be accepted by Dr. Linda M. Cunning, Executive Director. Also attending are Michael Dalby, CEO, and Bethany Sawyer, Vice President of Membership and Investors, the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce. Oh, thank you. You're already here. You guys are getting good at this.
I want to thank you again. I'm Linda Cunning with New Horizons of Southwest Florida. We serve incredible K through 12 students who are very under-resourced in our community. And so this, I appreciate being a Business of the Month because we really have an honor and a privilege to serve incredible students. So since I have a crowd here, we always are open to volunteers. So just want you to know. But thank you so much for your support through the years you've supported. This is our 21st year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on to Artist of the Month 5B, Christina Perez actually received her service award, but apparently anything that goes onto my change sheet, I'm willing to read into the record. So apologies there. It is correct. She has received her service award. It was not her fault for not being here. All right. Item 5B is Artist of the Month. Commissioner LeCastro, I believe you have the bio.
Yeah, some very interesting photography in the back. Our February Artist of the Month is Hilda Champion. Ms. Champion is a German-American fine art photographer and has been a full-time Naples resident since 2001. She is mainly self-taught and within a few years has made it to the top of the photography world. Hilda observes the world and uses her camera as a tool to express ideas and emotions. Her aspiration in photography is to bring out the unseen and to release the poetry of the ordinary. Her images are the essence of what she sees, free of distractions. Her work has been shown in many national and international competitions, and her images have won numerous awards. Is Hilda here? Do we know, County Manager, if our Artist of the Month is here?
She's not here.
Okay,
We were
well,
just reading this and allowing everyone to see.
Yeah,
the
very,
beautiful art.
very interesting, one-of-a-kind pieces in the back, so we thank her for her creativity. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 7, public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We have 4 registered speakers on this item. Your first speaker is Scott Sherman. He will be followed by Beth Sherman.
Before we have the public speakers come, several commissioners, maybe all of us, maybe just me, got some emails from some citizens, and rightly so. You know, citizens have an incredible attention to detail. We're going to be talking about things that are of concern to citizens today, but I just want to assure everyone, to separate rumor from fact, we have not changed anything when it comes to public speakers here. So although we might have added some detail a year ago to clarify some things, I can tell you as chairman, and I'm speaking for every commissioner here, I don't think anybody would jump in over here. We value greatly what citizens say at the podium here. At 3 minutes and 1 second, I can tell you at least in the year I'm in this seat, I won't be kicking anybody off. Might say to wrap it up or bring it in for a landing, as we say in the military. But I've said before, especially as a veteran, but I think as an American, this is one of the most important pieces of this whole meeting, whether we agree or disagree. So make no mistake, if there's confusion out there and we got a bunch of emails, oh my gosh, they're totally overhauled. We haven't changed one thing. But I appreciate citizens who catch a sentence tweak or something of that nature. It was nothing more than a year ago, just clarifying the discretion the chairman has. If we had 1,000 speakers all saying vote yes or no, the chairman does have some discretion to say, hey, do we want to pool your efforts? But, Mr. Sherman, what you're about to do is not done in every country in the world, and this is what makes America great. So the podium is yours, sir.
I agree.
Just with one proviso, we did start the clock while he was talking. So.
Okay, I don't expect.
Oh, absolutely. Troy, the red light.
Okay, so what I came to here to talk about this morning is to apologize to the commissioners that I did speak out about this rule change. And the reason I did that was last time I came here to speak, I asked this young man for someone to concede time to me for general comments. He said, we don't do that anymore, indicating that it was a new rule. I looked at the agenda and it had the specifications clarifying, so I thought that was when it started. Now, after I spoke out at CCREC, I was told by the 2 new commissioners that we'd not voted on that. We hadn't changed the rules, just as you spoke. So I do apologize for misspeaking. But what happened is I looked back at all the last agendas all the way to July of last year, and that was the first one I could find that had the clarification. It was July of last year. Okay, so, but I do want to speak out about concerns that if you shut down our ability to speak at this meeting openly in an open forum, it definitely is suppressing our right to free speech, because we need to be able to have on the record that we told our county commissioners, because we are supposed to, by Constitution, to instruct our government, and this is the best way we have to do it. So thank you for the time. I won't waste any more of your time, but I am sorry. I will never lie to you, but I can be wrong. Thank you.
Please have Mr. Sherman's comments stricken from the record. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you, sir. We are in full agreement.
Your next speaker is Beth Sherman. She'll be followed by Shelley McKernan.
although you guys did not just vote on that, I see it as a large concern that we're no longer allowed to concede time in general comments. I say that because in the past 2 years we've gotten, and when I say we, I mean we the people who are fighting back against the agendas that are going on, not just in this county, but all over the world. We couldn't have accomplished and gotten half the stuff on the record that we did if we weren't able to concede time. And I'll just tell you a little quick story about a gentleman that I met after speaking at the last commissioners meeting here. He was a gentleman that was visiting from Germany. His friend was here speaking on the Isle of Capri issue. After we spoke, I probably had close to a dozen people come talk to me who we were speaking out on issues of the safety of the vaccine, not a vaccine, but we'll get into that later. And I had almost a dozen people tell me that either them, their children, or people they know have been harmed by the vaccine with myocarditis. And this gentleman came up to me and he said, you know, my country is lost, Germany is lost. He said, I always thought that the United States was the last hope for freedom in the world. He said he's wrong, that this county is, and that he had never seen so many people come up and speak about topics like this. And he asked, you know, what can I do to help from so many miles away? And I said, just pray for us. So anyone who is a believer, I just ask that you raise your hand to the sky. I want to pray Luke 10:2 today over everybody. The harvest is much, but the workers are few. Lord, thank you so much for all the speakers, the protesters, and the vocal active citizens in this county, Lord, and all over the world. I ask that you exponentially increase their efforts and light a fire in the hearts and minds of all who can hear this. Give hope to the hopeless and faith to the faithless. This necklace that I wear today has a mustard seed in it to remind me that we only need faith the size of a mustard seed and to keep watering it, Lord. So thank you so much for all your blessings. Thank you for all the people in this room, and it is a full house. So thank you, Lord, for all of that. Guide our thoughts, words, and actions. In Jesus' name, amen.
Your next speaker is Shelley McKernan.
Troy, just 1 second. So I just want to clarify something there again to separate rumor from fact. So citizens come to this podium for multiple things. So this is public comment. They get 3 minutes. Seated time is not possible for public comment, nor has it ever been. But when we're talking about issues, like perfect example is David Lawrence Center, our policy is the same as it's always been. That's when seated time is allowed. But public comment is 3 minutes, and if you want 20 people to all speak on the same issue on public comment, all 20 have to be in the room. Seated time, since the beginning of time in this room, I believe, has only been for when there's speakers on issues that are on the agenda, not the open public comment, correct?
Correct.
So nothing's been changed when that comes and for that issue. Okay.
Your next speaker is Shelley McKernan. She'll be followed by Daniel Zagaric.
Hello, council members. My name is Shelley McKernan, also known as C. Shelley, the Mermaid of Naples, self-proclaimed. I am here to talk about the water. All of our water is connected. I can't imagine I can look at anybody in this room and they can say they do not love water. We love our water here. We need our water here. All of our water is connected. All of our waterways inland are impaired. The Naples Bay, which is our county's beautiful body of water, has added nutrients so much that it has an overgrowth of algae, and it's only going to get worse over time. This time of year, it's actually the best time of year, and we see major impairment that is going on with Naples Bay right now. You can't see the bottom. The benthic mat is incredibly thick, and all water has been displaced after the storm because of the sand that has gone in through Naples Bay. Now, why do I mention Naples Bay to the county meeting? Well, because all water is connected, the city of Naples can't actually completely fix the bay until it is addressed by the county. Certain things that the city of Naples has done is they have an advanced water treatment plant. The county doesn't have any of that stuff. And any of that added nutrients and different things that are coming from those treatment plants along with road runoff from the road or anything else, it just continues into the bay. So the bay can never be fixed until the county addresses these added nutrients that are coming from waterways from the county. The FDEP has lowered the standard of water for the oxygen level. The dissolved oxygen level is right now, it's changed from a dissolved oxygen level of 5 to a dissolved oxygen saturation of 2.5. what qualifies life to be alive in water with oxygen. Life needs 5 milligrams per liter of water to 20. And right now, we can everything can be acceptable for 2.5 milligrams per liter of water. And that is obviously nothing can survive. Grass can't grow, shells won't grow. We won't get animals like dolphins and manatees coming to our waterways anymore. It's actually kind of sad, and it's showing that we don't love our water. There are solutions. There's the advanced water treatment facilities that all of our water plants can be adjusted to, and then there are companies that can come in and remove these nutrients, and you can own the tech, and you can sell the fertilizer that is collected from it, and there are solutions. We need filters on lots of our waterways, along with maybe even addressing more of our microbial solutions that exist to work with the benthic mat and to clean the water. So I just ask you that we look into this a little bit more. We work with the city, we work with Marco Island, and we show that we do have love for our water. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Daniel Zagaric. He'll be followed on Zoom by Katie Berkeley.
Good morning. My name is Daniel Zagaric. Thanks for the pronunciation. Chairman and commissioners, I just want to say what a great job Commissioner Kowal did in his recent address to Naples City Council in regard to building our emergency berm. No doubt, great communication and collaboration between Collier commissioners and the Naples City Council will be necessary as we move through this project and future Army Corps of Engineer project and other future projects. Thank you.
We have one more registered speaker on item 7, Katie Berkeley. We have had a little trouble connecting with her. Katie, you're unmuted. Can you hear us? Oh, wait a minute. I have a problem on my end. Just a second, Katie. All right, Katie, go ahead. Can you hear us? Katie? All right, I've lost Katie. Oh, there she is, Katie.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Please, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Oh, yes, and I think I'm misplaced. I'm asking to speak regarding what was 16K8, which I believe is now 12A.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. We will bring you back at that time. Thank you. That's all we have, Commissioner.
Okay, can we move to our time certain at 9:30?
Yes, sir. So we have two companion items, time certain at 9:30. We're just about there. By the time I read them in, we'll be ready to go. These are items 10A and 11A. I will read them in. We're going to start with 11A, which is a report to the Board of County Commissioners relative to the information and services being provided to the public through the COVID-19 Extra Mile Migrant Farm Worker Community Grant. Ms. Maggie Lopez, Community and Human Services Interim Director, will present that item. It will be followed by 10A, which is a recommendation that the board consider reimbursing the COVID-19 Extra Mile Migrant Farm Worker Community Grant and direct staff to find an alternative funding source. I did read a correction into the record on this and the intent of the money going back, which we'll discuss again when we get to 10A. But at this time, we'll start with Ms. Lopez.
Commissioners, for the record, Maggie Lopez, Interim Director for Community and Human Services. I'm available for questions, or I can do a presentation if you'd like. Presentation. Okay. I'm new to this, so let me see. Here we go. All right, the staff was requested to do a presentation to the board on the information that is getting handed out to the community for the Extra Mile award. What I wanted to start out with reminding the board is good news for everybody that the federal government is planning to end the COVID public emergency May 11th. The reason I want to bring this up to the board is this is going to allow us to have greater flexibility with this CDC grant that we're doing. It's going to allow us to do more work towards other areas that are important to this community, like public health, doing referrals for primary care, and getting away from promoting the vaccine and booster shots. Another information that was asked of staff was to report what kind of reporting were we doing to the federal government in regards to this grant. What I wanted to report in year 1 and year 2 of our annual and semi-annual performance reports were some of the data that we provide. One of the requirements under this grant was to fund 6 community health workers, which we were able to do in year 2. Year 1 was the year we were working towards recruiting our partners' community health network. Were recruiting, training, and bringing them online, which happened in year 2. These are some of the numbers that we report on, the number of organizations that are used to coordination with working to lead the efforts, on the messaging that is going out into the community, and we also report number of individuals that are getting reached through the community, which is primarily Immokalee. And again, a big part of this program is to do referrals for primary care and other services. And so far in year 2, we've reported 75. Other data referral collection information that we are reporting are in other areas. I know the big focus right now is some of the services that are controversial, but the other components that we're also doing referrals are diabetes, hypertension, housing and shelter emergency assistance, especially those affected by Hurricane Ian, and giving assistance to other programs such as Food, SNAP, and WIC. There was a concern and staff was asked to address how our information that we are collecting in the data collection, how is it getting protected, how is it being utilized? And what I wanted to mention, incorporated in the grant, incorporated with this funding, is how the information is used and how it's protected by federal laws. No particular information about a specific person, their location, is reported up the chain. Everything is secured, and the information that is shared is information that is required by law to be provided to the Florida Department of Health. What I wanted to also point out is now that we're in year 2, there are some planning changes that we are hoping to focus the funds on. That is to use the carry forward funds that we have to those Hurricane Ian victims. One of the drives and outreach events that happened was to provide food and water and to those affected, and to also allow them to know about resources available to them as residents who may have been displaced by the hurricane. We're also looking to expand mental health services to Collier residents and hoping to workshop that out so that we can be in line with Collier County's mental health strategies. And we're also collaborating with other agencies just to expand the referral systems and to expand services into other priority populations, which would be Everglades City, Goodland, Chokoloskee, and Copeland. In your packet, we also provided all of the educational materials that have been provided out there to the public as far as resources that are available to them, the locations of where they can get primary care, locations about the vaccine, locations, information about symptoms that they may have, flu shot information, flu shot drives, all of that was provided. And I also just I can stop there, I can keep going forward. I don't know if there's any questions for the group that you would like me to answer.
How much more do you have on your slideshow? I mean,
no, this was just going into the availability of funds that we have in the agreement, just to outline that as the board can decide on termination of funds. And I think that was all I have. Again, just going into where we're trying to develop the grant, going towards the work that the community health workers are doing, the primary focus to go out there and engage on health services within our community for those in the Immokalee area. And that's the end of my presentation.
thank you.
Commissioners, this item was brought onto the agenda at your request to provide those answers to those questions that came up 2 meetings ago. Now, as a companion to this, we have Commissioner Hall's item, and we have a number of public speakers. So I think now's the time that we want to sort out when we want to take those speakers. If they're, do we have one specific to this item, Troy, to 11A? Or are they?
Yeah, I have a rather large PowerPoint from, I think it's Miss Kingston.
Yep.
And I know she's going to get a block of time. And then I have 16 other speakers registered besides that.
On 10A or on 11A?
They're just combined 10A, 11A
Okay.
because they're companion items.
So,
Yeah, County Manager, before we do that, I have Commissioner McDaniel lit up here, and I really want to give him the floor because, the bulk of this is in, it affects all of us, but, the bulk of it is in District 5. So, he's who I would like to hear from, and I think all the other commissioners would agree. So, sir, floor is yours.
And I'm going to keep it brief. You started this presentation off and made a statement of promoting the vaccine. Was that done?
It's promoting the effects of the symptoms and resources available to getting the vaccine.
Okay. Because I feel fairly certain with the new executive director of Healthcare Network that there wasn't promotion of, I felt a fairly balanced set of information. There may be, Mr. Kiley might not necessarily agree with that balance, but with Jamie's coming into the Healthcare Network, there seemed to be a better balance, but I have yet to see what was being dispersed by the folks with Partners in Health prior to his taking the seat at Healthcare Network. Was there ever, to your knowledge, was there ever promotional information put forward with the vaccinations?
The information that we asked, everything was given over and was included in your packet.
Okay.
It was not asked in a way to what was pre or or after. It was all information provided.
Okay, I understand, and I'm just asking,
Yeah.
and again, this is a public hearing, we're gonna make a big decision here today, and I want to assure that we were dispersing information about assets. That was the direction that I had given when this Partners in Health group came to Collier County. That was the direction that I had set forth, that I wanted to be the choice to the physician and the patient as to what their care and what their requisites were, and that we had these assets. And if you wanted to wear a mask, here's where you go to get a mask. If you wanted to take the vaccination, here's where you go to get the vaccination. I stood with the governor of the state of Florida in Immokalee when he stood up the monoclonal treatment facility in Immokalee. There again, a proven successful treatment for folks that had contracted the virus, and then the federal government ceased that funding as well because it was working so good. So the I'm sorry, that was a slant. I shouldn't have said that. The bottom line is I wanted to ensure that the intent never was to promote, only educate, only share with patients, people, where the assets were in fact
And that
available.
is correct, sir.
Okay, so I still, and again, I've read a lot. I just haven't been able to. Mr. Ulmer was very kind to share the information that was being dispersed by the Healthcare Network and the promoters after he came in. But I think there's an issue with what was going on in advance of that with the previous executive director. So, and I'm done.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, and maybe in the comments from the Healthcare Network CEO, and maybe if others are going to come to the podium, I get the COVID piece and the citizen concern, and it's and it has merit for sure. But also where I would like a little deeper dive is before we take a giant bite of the apple. My understanding is that these funds do a whole lot of other things. So, I want to make sure that if we're going to do a big giant knee jerk, we don't shut off, or we realize that we'd be shutting off a whole bunch of other things that have nothing to do with COVID. And everybody's saying the word COVID, but when you really look at the nomenclature here, it's the extra mile migrant farm worker community. I mean, it's mostly based in District 5, so I don't know every moving part, but I know there's
District 4. There's
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There is a huge component throughout our community to support the agricultural industry.
Yeah, absolutely. But, so if somebody could expand, and maybe the healthcare network, senior leadership would be best to do that. I just want to make sure that before we make any kind of decision, we know actually what we're voting on, and we're not sort of just isolating one piece and then maybe killing a whole bunch of other things that have had a lot of need. And I know you touched on it a little bit last time you were here, but I think it's important to do the deepest dive possible, so we sort of measure twice and cut once, and know exactly what we're doing.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to say a few words. Jamie Ulmer from Healthcare Network, and thank you for your presentation. To your point, Commissioner McDaniel, promotion is very distinguishable difference than education. Our flyers and information, everything that's been requested, we wanted to make sure that we were fully transparent and turn those over. Those documents are purely education. The community health workers are from that community. They're Haitians, they're from Guatemala, Venezuela. They're from that entire area, and so they speak their language. They walk and talk and eat and dine with them. They use the educational materials in their multicultural languages to educate them. If they choose to seek further care, whether it be a vaccine, whether it be more information on the COVID differences of the vaccines, or whether it be to wear a mask or not, the information is provided for them to be able to make that decisions. There's a difference between when we here in Naples understand what the guidelines are or what information is being provided and choose to receive care or not. But the folks in Immokalee are different. They don't know whether they're not educated to that level to understand. And so all our material is to do is to educate. Promotion would be if we said, hey, we'll give you this if you take that. And we never did that.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, because there was a lot of promotion going on. We all know that there were gift certificates and ball caps and all. Go get a friend and we'll give you a prize if you help somebody else get vaccinated. And I just wanted to ensure that that was never a direction that came from me. And again, this isn't covering up anything. This is just me telling the truth about weekly telephone calls that I was on with our partners in health and our healthcare network and my philanthropic organizations in Immokalee, the Coalition of Immokalee Farm Workers and RCMA, and oh my goodness, every week we were on a call working with the community. The promotoras were going door to door, and I just wanted to ensure that promotional aspect wasn't put forth. So thank you.
And to your point, Commissioner LaCostra, this grant is, the way that it was explained on the PHE ending, this grant is about 75,000 people potentially receiving access to health care. I really wish that we could have had the opportunity to bring folks from Immokalee, but they're working. They don't have transportation. They don't have the ability to be here to voice. And so my entire team is here to say, look, this community needs access to health care, and this is where 95% of these dollars are going to. The other 5% are for COVID information. But think about where the remaining 95% goes to support transportation, to support being able to provide them health care when they cannot afford it, nor can they voice. They're not the ones in here today. And so this grant is to help us be able to do something that we normally would not be able to do. So thank you.
So I appreciate that. I think the concern of the citizens in here with the 5%, I like how you say that, and that might be arguable, but it's the smaller piece of the bigger piece of the pie of the grant. I think we understand that. But, it's one thing, and I'm not taking a position here. I want to hear your comment to this. So it's great if educational materials are given to the folks in Immokalee, and to your point, if English is their second language, they have a hard time understanding things. If those materials came from an organization that in some cases now is sort of backing down a little bit, some would say, from what they initially said. So it may not be promotion on our part, and exactly what Commissioner McDaniel was saying, we didn't line people up and say, or like you said, take this shot when it comes to COVID, and you have to do it or whatnot. But handing out materials that might have been questionable and then were taken by those folks that maybe lacked education, English wasn't their second language. I mean, I can definitely see the concern by citizens who have CDC concerns, saying, "Wow, somebody who read that, it almost would sound directional. Like, wow, your government, the top organization that runs health in the United States of America says this. Read it and then make your own decision." And I think the concern is a lot of people that are in that description, group that you mentioned in Immokalee would take that maybe as a little bit of directional or, wow, it's extremely educational, and then they would make a certain decision. And some of those educational materials are now in question, and that's what's being brought to us. I'd like you to just, comment on that.
Well, I would be the first to say that I think that the material obviously needs to be updated as time goes on. As the PHE ends and as the grant is continued to be awarded, I think that the focus is 100% on diabetes and patient access, and the 5% is gone. But my point that I'd like to stress to your statement or question, Commissioner Castro, is that no one knew really what COVID was going to be about.
Come on.
And it is a learning process. And as we have learned, and as the materials that we were presented to present is what we were presenting. Is it our intent to provide documentations or educational materials to a group of folks that may not be true or that may have some discrepancies? Absolutely not. So with that being said, let's not punish the people who are trying to get access with those dollars. Let's say, hey, look, we obviously see that there's been some changes. Time has pursued, and let's make that change. But let's not take away what's going to obviously create something for that community.
Commissioner Cowell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to be a little lengthy here, but
Okay.
I watched the presentation, and you showed some slides and some numbers, and I know that once the program started, you had a 6-month window to get a first performance measure report back to the provider, and I got copies of that, and I believe the other commissioners did. And I looked at the numbers outside of the things connected to COVID, and I didn't see an overwhelming amount of numbers. I mean, even in the slides she just showed now, I said 5, 20. I mean, those are not big numbers in these other categories. Now, when you look at the month through April to August, the biggest number I saw in the report was 500 tests for COVID. Those numbers jump up when they're COVID related. And we spent $166,000 and some change on this program so far out of the money that was given to us. That's not a big chunk of money, not when it comes to healthcare overall. Right. All right. And so however that money was used or whatever happened with that money, it didn't seem like it did a whole lot outside of the COVID portion of the grant, if you're following me on that. And the other thing is when we provide information to people, we should provide information on both sides, the pros and cons, and let them make a conscious decision. Let them make the decision, because that's where the decision relies. And I understand what Commissioner Costa is saying. Sometimes these people aren't, and you said it yourself, they're not the most educated people. But you look at an official person showing up and you hand them a document and it's only one-sided, they have a tendency to believe the one side that you're presenting them, correct?
I absolutely understand.
And you've stated before when you stood before me in this podium, and I do respect you for your service to the country, and you said you've been a partnership with us and a partnership in the Immokalee area for 40 years.
Right.
40 years.
Over 40.
And you're saying now that we just have 6 people hired that actually speak Creole, Spanish, from this community to help with our healthcare network?
Only the community health workers. Our entire organization.
What do we do for the other 39 years?
Over 50% speak multicultural.
Okay, so we have people in place that can perform these duties. The 6 that we hired are just additional to ones that can still perform the duties that we getting out there and working on getting these numbers from 20 diabetic cases up higher, correct?
Yes, sir. This team is specially designed to actually go into the community and into someone's house. Our folks that speak over 50% of the language work in our facilities. They're not designed to go out into the communities or walk the grounds, down the dirt roads, down into the actual farm workers where they live, where they work. So this team is a lot different. And your numbers, sir, I do know that I could interpret and see that those numbers may look low, but the teams were designed approximately about a year, 8 months to a year after the grant actually was awarded. The second is that we have a $400,000 request with the county as we speak. It's just that we're waiting for this process before that can be awarded. So that although it's 176, it's actually already up to about 700,000.
So at the 166 we spent to get us to where we are today, do you think if you had this plan and you brought it to us, and the health department brought it to us as a board of county commissioners and said, this is a plan we need for the people in Immokalee and Everglades City and some other areas, because I saw several other areas in the report that were, you did reach out to, you think you probably have a good chance of us saying, you know what, yeah, that's 166,000 for healthcare to our community can't be provided. We could probably find that money somewhere, and not necessarily. And I'm still confused to why the county got the grant, not the state.
Because the federal government oftentimes will design a grant to go through a community or county entity so that it shows that the support for this particular grant is there. If we could have applied to that grant individually and by ourselves, we would have, but it required a municipality, the county, the city, to actually apply for the grant, and then we would be the sub-award recipient. It was always planned that we would be the sub-award recipient. In most of our grants, we apply separately and we would not be standing here today. However, this grant is a little different, and so it did have that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, just as a point, and you said it, Commissioner LaCastro, and you said it, Commissioner Cowell, these weren't official government people going and knocking on doors. These were members of the community that were hired through Partners in Health to go and educate the population in these communities. There is a huge citizenship issue. I said it out loud.
We agree.
And these people are trained to not open the door when someone of official status shows up. They don't do it. We had the issue in Irma. There were people, you should have saw the conditions that were happening when code enforcement showed up to some of these manufactured homes that were destroyed during Irma. And so the premise, just so you know, the premise was to have members of the community that spoke in multiple language go to these camps, if you will, to these areas where migrant populations live and disperse through the different agencies that are in fact in the community. As I already mentioned, RCMA has a group of families that they work with. The Coalition of Immokalee Workers, Farm Workers has a group. The Guadalupe Center has a group of families who they know and trust and receive information from. So just to dispel that somebody of official status was showing up and telling you that you should or shouldn't do something, it wasn't the case. These were actually community members that lived in the community that were hired through Partners in Health with the intent of education. Now, whether or not that was actually the fact, necessarily we'll all have to get to decide. But I just wanted to clear that up, that it wasn't there wasn't a government official showing up and handing you this information with the inference of doing one thing or another. So, all right, I'm good. I'll make a motion to accept the report from Maggie. Do we need to do that or no? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor to accept the report?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, accepting the report carries unanimously.
Thank you. This moves us to item 10A, which is the companion. This is the recommendation that the board consider reimbursing the COVID-19 Extra Mile Migrant Farm Worker Community Grant. And this is being brought to the board by Commissioner Hall.
So I bring this forward because You know, it's already been said, so I'm not going to beat the dead horse. But the three-letter agencies in this country don't run it. The people do. And when no government officials showed up at their door, but the government officials showed up in information. And when you're a migrant worker, if I was in Mexico and I had information come to me, I wouldn't want to do anything that was going to jeopardize me having to leave. So I'm going to accept that as truth. And that's what several of the commissioners have said. So I bring forth this thing, I agree. Some of the other things that they could do with the money are really wonderful things. You could do this, you could do that, you could do this, and you could do that. However, there's been a year and a half and only $166,000 has been used, which is to hire people to spread the information. $257,000 of the first grant hadn't even been used. And if we're going to do all of these other things, then there would be a backlog, or that money would be used boom, 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 boom. So based on that, I'm bringing forth to send those funds back. So I make a motion to send those funds back.
Commissioner McDaniel.
And I'm seconding his motion for comment. And the question I have for our county attorney is, the main concern with regard to these funds is the strings that are attached to the federal government through the CDC or HHS with regard to imposition of a mandate that was unconstitutional. If we don't give back the received money, if we just cancel the grant and don't take any more money, are we still not obligated on that 166, 176, whatever it is that's been spent? Are we still exposed to the terms and conditions of the grant?
Barring a court order.
Yes.
I would tell them to pound salt.
I know what you would tell them, and I know, and again, we've talked about this. I have never voted to implement, let me finish. I've never voted to implement a mandate or anything that was unconstitutional. I don't think this board would either. Yes or no, if we don't send back the original, if you know the answer, yes or no, I don't mean to be pointing at you. But yes or no, if we don't send back the already bequeathed money, are we still exposed in the original language of the grant?
Only if you get a court order.
I understand, yes. So yes, we are still exposed. So one of the things that I heard this morning, it was a change that we weren't proposing to send back the money that we've already received.
We're not proposing to send back the money that has already been spent. So the grant's been awarded, and 166,000 and some pending payments have been spent in accordance with the grant requirements. What the proposal is we send back what's not been spent, and we don't what has been spent because it was spent under the terms of the grant.
So henceforth, if we don't send that money back that we've already received, are we still exposed under the terms and conditions of the grant? Because if we're still exposed under the terms and conditions of the grant, there's no reason to cancel the grant and the potential good that it could do for our community if we don't cancel it and eliminate the exposure at all.
If you retain the funding, you have to comply with the grant conditions. If you give back the money, I would say that we're done, which is why I'm saying barring a court order, I think we're done.
So I'm going to withdraw my second if your motion was to cancel the grant and not send back the money. I want the money sent back.
We still have a few commissioners lit up here, and then I got a couple questions too. So, Commissioner,
can we clarify the motion originally, just so I can withdraw my second, if that was your
The motion is to send back the remaining money and not spend any more taxpayer money on what's already been spent that was already in compliance.
specifically?
Specifically, the $166,000 in change. That money was spent. We were in compliance. If we were not in compliance, we would be exposed to it. But we were in compliance with the information spread, so I don't want to spend any more taxpayer money.
Nor do I, but I want you to be very clear. I'm withdrawing my second on that because we are still exposed if we don't send back the already received and expended money under the terms of the grant.
Okay, I understand. We are not exposed if we spent the money in compliance. There is no exposure. We complied to the terms of the grant.
I don't agree.
Okay.
the terms of the grant specify that the recipient of the grant, if received a mandate or a edict from the CDC or HHS, we'd have to comply with that mandate or edict, or we would be in non-compliance with the grant.
Right.
Not the expenditure of the money. No, we are exposed if there was ill intent or misuse of the funds. That was a separate item. But the issue that I have is the aggregate exposure that comes from the boilerplate money that comes from the grantor. And that's where I want the original 166, whatever it is, I want it sent back, and then we have no exposure to them whatsoever.
Can we hear from Commissioner Saunders? Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just trying to also understand exactly what the motion is. And
Right.
And it seems to me, and this is just a question for the county attorney and for Commissioner Hall, it seems to me that $166,000 plus or minus has already been spent. The question is, do we send $167,000 back in a check to the federal government, or do we simply cancel the grant? And I think that's the question we're trying to understand. Now, obviously, and Commissioner Hall, you had said this, that we were in compliance with the grant, so there shouldn't be any exposure if we don't write a check to the federal government for $167,000. I think that's what you're trying to say is, let's cancel the grant, but let's not spend Collier County citizens' tax money to send money back to the federal government when there's really no exposure, no reason to do that. I'm just trying to get a clarification.
Yes.
County attorney.
But I'll just say here's the loose end that I think Commissioner McDaniel is bringing up, that I have the same concern, is if you spent $167,000 and there were no strings, but the money was spent. Now 6 months from now, and this is what the people are saying, CDC all of a sudden sends us a whole list of demands from all the people who spent the money. Then we're on the hook. You know, to me, it's all or nothing. I say we don't play games with the government. If we don't feel like, this is where we have the power to do what we want to do here. And I'm $167,000. We waste that in 5 minutes in Collier County. Okay. Okay. Commissioner McDaniel, sir, you have the floor.
I know, but you made my point. You made it very adeptly, and I don't agree with the I do agree with the thought process. We're not exposed on how we actually expended the money, but I don't agree that we're not exposed in the aggregate terms of the grant that say if a mandate or an edict comes out of the CDC or HHS, we have to comply. I have no intent of complying with them at all. So. If the motion maker can adjust his motion to send back the money we've already got and cancel the grant, I'll second that.
A sidebar question would be the other items that the money has been explained to us has gone for, even though the numbers, I agree, I was expecting them to be much more impressive. I really appreciate you pointing that out, Commissioner Colwell. Does the healthcare network or any other agency, they always have the ability to come to the county for additional funds or other grant avenues that are non-federal, right? I mean, there's other things, because I don't want the message here to be the 5% or whatever it is, and that's arguable, but the percentage of money that went to COVID and all the things that we're here debating, that all the other things just shut down and go away if we think they have merit. So, I mean, even if we decided right now whether we give all the money back or we stop the grant or what have you, the healthcare network and even other agencies that benefited from that grant for other things that don't seem to be arguable, they have the ability to come to the county, correct? Or to pursue other non-federal grants to keep those programs going, correct?
They have the ability to pursue any avenue of funding that they would like. As far as coming to the county, remember that healthcare is not the county's primary business, and there are very few lanes where we do provide those funding as required by certain rules or laws or arrangements. But nothing prohibits them from coming to the county. Whether or not that's the county's role is a different question.
And sometimes our role is guidance. Hey, you've come to the wrong agency, but let's redirect you to 4 other directions.
Yes, sir.
That sort of thing. Okay.
I will amend the motion to return the grant and to return all the monies. I was just merely concerned about taxpayer monies. I didn't want to waste them.
I got you. And I'll second that motion.
Yep. Okay, I don't see any other commissioners lit up, so we have a motion and a second.
Sir, we have
Public speakers? Okay, how many we have?
16.
I'm at a little bit of a loss. I've got a slideshow presentation from Miss Kingston. I was told that she wasn't doing, and if it's Miss or Mr., I'm not sure. I was told they weren't doing a speaker slip. So I thought they were going to present first. Are you Miss Kingston? I got it right. Yay.
One second.
Okay,
One
wait
second.
Yes.
Commissioner
yes.
McDaniel.
1 second.
And then I have 14 speakers. Sorry.
It would be my vote, and all due respect, dear Karen, that we not have this presentation from you here today. And that if you wish to have this presentation, that you advertise and come back with a separate agenda item for her to make the presentation with her representations of the ill effects of the circumstances, so that there are other members of the community who I shall not name, who are here in the room that have an opportunity to respond. This is, her presentation has to do with us in this particular grant. And I would rather we have another public hearing with regard to that as opposed to this today. Because there's really there's no opportunity for a rebuttal. There is 50% of the people in this room who have a different opinion with regard to the ill effects of what's transpiring.
I wish to hear Miss Kingston. She came from California to speak.
I'd like to stand by. Hold it. Okay, we're not going to turn this into a clown show. Okay, we're trying to do this professionally. Commissioner Saunders.
I agree with Commissioner Hall. We're here. She's here. Let's go ahead and get through the whole process. There's no reason. I don't believe there's any reason for an agenda item in 2 or 4 weeks to discuss the same topic. So, I agree with Commissioner Hall on that.
Okay. I do as well. Commissioner Cole, do you have any comment?
No, I agree also. I mean, this is the time and a place. Let's hear everything.
I'm here to get this done. It's already done. Okay. And I don't disagree. Just a reminder, at 10:17, the governor has directed that we take a moment of silence, so I'll stop us at the appropriate time.
COVID-19 mRNA vaccines specifically are associated.
I'm going to do it again.
Probably almost every American would be surprised to hear these COVID-19 mRNA vaccines specifically are associated with an increased risk of appendicitis. They're associated with an increased risk of Bell's palsy. They're associated with an increased risk of shingles, which can be severe in some cases. They're associated with changes in sperm motility and sperm function and sperm count. And most recently, we're finding that they are present in breast milk, even though an earlier study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association reported that they were not in breast milk. And by the way, the reference for the increased risk of things like appendicitis and Bell's palsy, et cetera, comes from a paper that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So one of the things that I and other people did during the pandemic that distinguished us, we were talking about Dr. Bhattacharya earlier, is that we tried to be honest and we called things out when they were not honest. Probably almost every American would be surprised to hear these COVID-19 mRNA vaccines specifically are associated with an increased risk of appendicitis.
Oh, okay.
So,
They're
yeah.
associated with
Thank
an
you so much.
increased
Yeah,
risk
that's
of
it.
Bell's palsy.
So that's Surgeon
They're
General
associated with an increased-
Ladapo, your Surgeon General of Florida. Hi, I'm Karen Kingston. I'm a biotech analyst, med-legal advisor. And that was just Surgeon General Ladapo. How do I get this to full screen? Hold on.
You're good.
Thank you.
Now just-
As you were saying, that the federal government and representatives of the federal government weren't always honest. And I'm honored to be here to speak to you, commissioners. I'm honored to be in a free county in the United States of Florida, so thank you for having me. My colleagues in San Diego have been arrested for speaking out at the commissioners' meeting, so I feel safe here, so thank you for that. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but I do want to address these materials on the right-hand side, that chaotic piece that you see. That is one of the materials from the NIH for the COVID-19 education. And I agree this isn't a promotional piece, because in promotion, in my industry, under the law, you have to provide fair balance. And fair balance is what your Surgeon General just said. So on every one of these pieces, it would have to say, you're at risk for a heart attack, you're at risk for inflammation of your brain and spinal cord, you're at risk for having a stroke, you're at risk for having a reduced sperm count, you're at risk for having a spontaneous abortion, you're at risk for being infertile. And none of that was provided. And what's happened in America is many families, individuals, and counties have delegated the responsibilities of taking care of one another to the federal government. And when people and institutions don't have good intentions, or their intentions aren't in alignment with yours, they often will say things that, as Surgeon General Ladapo said, are not honest. And so I'm going to go through the materials real quick, and then I just want to go into what your Surgeon General has emphasized, which is that the safety needs to be taken in consideration in regards to the efficacy of these biological injections. So I want to show you some of the materials that I used to get paid from Big Pharma to look at, and then to create materials to educate doctors, and I want to share that information with you. It's been filed with the FDA. So let me just figure out how to do this. How do I?
The space bar should work.
Space bar.
One quick question.
Okay.
Did you email this presentation to us yet?
Yes, I did. It's been emailed.
So it is available online. If
It is,
anybody
yeah,
else
okay.
wants it.
Yeah, it is. This is from Mr. Euler. The letter says, again, if someone's intentions aren't in alignment with yours, they'll tell you what you want to hear. And I think it's very clear that the commissioner said, look, if we're going to work with the NIH, we've got to be very clear. We're not going to adhere to mandates such as mask wearing, and we don't want promotion of the vaccine. So in the letter from the healthcare network, it clearly states at no time are they going to promote the mask wearing or being vaccinated, yet the materials say wear a mask, yet it says get vaccinated from the CDC. Yet the materials from Moderna say this is you are being offered a vaccine. So, I mean, I think it's reasonable to assume that maybe they're being disingenuous a little bit. So we don't know what's going on in the brick and mortar. We don't know what's going on in the mobile units. And then for the Pfizer one, it was to offer it to children 12 and older. And Surgeon General Ladapo recommends strongly against injecting the children, as well as strongly against injecting men under the age of 39. And I took a look at the materials the analysis that Surgeon Ladapo had done for young men under the age of 40 who had cardiac-related death, and we're going to go into that. So what is these adverse outcomes that they're speaking of? I'm sure many people have heard of the vaccine adverse event reporting system, and it's said to represent about 1% of the actual events. And you can see here there's urgent care, hospitalizations, heart attacks, myocarditis, and they call this adverse event reporting system, except adverse events are unintended consequences. It's stuff that happened that wasn't expected. And when it is expected, which I'm going to show you that they knew this was coming, it's deceptive in nature and criminal in nature. And these numbers do not properly reflect the actual numbers in the United States. There was an early app that was called the vSafe database for 10 million early adopters who got injected, and 7.7% of those 10 million had an adverse event. Over 500,000 of them had to go to urgent care. That was just in the first couple months of the rollout with just 10 million. There's only 200,000 going to urgent care in the hospital in VAERS after 2 years on being available. So again, VAERS is supposed to be adverse events. They're unexpected. But on October 22nd, 2020, the FDA met with industry, including Pfizer, and they said, here are the outcomes of the mRNA COVID-19 injections. As you can see, it includes birth defects, stroke, seizures, convulsions, swelling of the spinal cord, myocarditis, myocardial infarction, and death. So this was based on both the phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, but is also based on the use of mRNA lipid nanoparticle technology in cancer. I'm sure people have heard this technology isn't new. It was used in cancer, and so they knew that these events were going to happen because those people had 2 weeks left to live. So it was a reasonable risk if they had a risk for death. It's not a reasonable risk to put someone at a risk for death, stroke, heart attack, or permanently being disabled when they have their entire life in front of them, especially a 6-year-old child. This was in clear violation of the food and drug safety laws. So under phase 1 trials, if you're going to put a human being or a child at unnecessary risk for illness or injury, it's against the law. They knew this. This is a June 2021 meeting with the FDA with Pfizer and industry, and they talked about doing the studies in children. What did they say? They said in the studies with children, yes?
Can I just make one correction?
Yeah.
You're addressing us, not briefing the crowd.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so used to doing that.
It's a small little technicality.
I know.
Everybody
I'm sorry.
hears, but just so we can keep protocol.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you for correcting me, Commissioner LaCastro. So they, in June 2021, what happened is they met with the industry, and the FDA had said, look, we can't conduct a clinical trial in children because children don't get the disease. It's statistically infeasible or impossible to make a vaccine that's going to be more effective than a child's natural immune system. So that was clear violation, putting the children at risk. And again, under 21 U.S.C. 355, the risk evaluation and mitigation strategies, it has to show that the benefit outweighs the risk. And again, for healthy people, for children, for adults, basically for 99% of Americans, the benefit did not outweigh the risk with these injections. And the risk was 0.1% per Dr. Anthony Fauci from February of 2020 in the New England Journal of Medicine. He published his public opinion. And the real risk was for people 85 and older who had a case fatality rate of between 10 and 27%. The fatality rate in that age range was 13%. So overall, the rate of dying from COVID-19 was similar to your age group. Unless you were under the age of 19, then there was no risk. So going back to your Surgeon General Ladapo's study on the adults with cardiac-related death related to the injections, he looked at both adults and women. And we don't have a ton of time, but he concluded that men under the age of 39 had an 84% increase of risk for having a cardiac-related death. I wanted to show everyone the numbers here that you can see. He took a look. What he did is he looked at the Florida database of everyone that had a cardiac-related death that had a COVID-19 injection. Dr. Ladapo had excluded anyone that got a booster shot or more, so you can only have 1 or 2 shots. He excluded anyone who had a COVID-19 diagnosis. And he also excluded anyone that had a history of cardiovascular disease. So it was very, very limited numbers. And he looked at the number of deaths for people who died within 6 months of an injection, and the risk period was within 4 weeks or 28 days. What you can see is that with that stringent criteria, he found that over 16,000 men and women died from a cardiac-related death from a COVID-19 injection within 6 months, and over 3,400 within 4 weeks. This is why he recommends against it. What I want to show is why the federal government is not being honest with us. In the VAERS database, over a period of 2 years across our entire nation, just for the United States, they have 16,000 deaths in total. In total, not related to all the different diseases that's related to the COVID-19 injections. And when your Surgeon General took a close look at his state alone, he found over 16,000 just with cardiac related within a 6-month period.
Ma'am, can we just take a pause right there?
Mm-hmm.
Let me just read something from our governor, Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
It says, whereas on February 14th, 2023 marks the 5th anniversary of one of Florida's darkest days when 17 innocent lives were lost in a massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Now, therefore, I, Governor Ron DeSantis, Governor of the state of Florida, by virtue of the power and authority vested in me, ask all residents of the state of Florida to pause for a moment of silence at 10:17 a.m. on February 14th.
With that.
God bless those children and families.
Amen.
It's a tough act to follow.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You're back on.
Sorry. So I'll resume. Thank you. Let me put my timer on because I can be verbose, as you can imagine. I'll wrap this up in 3 minutes. Many people may or may not be aware that it's the spike protein you were told early on that causes the inflammation, disease, and death. And related to Surgeon General Ladapo's research, recent publication from the American Heart Association of July of last year, they stated it is the spike protein that causes heart damage. And they found that the spike protein causes heart damage independent of what they call binding to the A2 receptors. It is actually a pathogen. It causes cytokine storms and inflammatory responses in the body, independent of binding to any A2 receptors. It binds to inflammatory receptors, and it also attacks the heart directly. So it is a biological weapon, if you will. It causes disease, disabilities, and death. I also just wanted to point out that in November of 2020, under the adult study that Pfizer had submitted in that trial, that there were 100 children ages 12 to 15 who had reactogenicity response to their injection. And Pfizer stated that they wanted the FDA to cover up the data. They said the data was not favorable, do not disclose it. This is criminal, it is criminal, because this is what reactogenicity data is. It's the outcomes, the negative harmful outcomes from the injections. So in October 2020, they knew this was going to harm children. They knew that there was no benefit to vaccinating children, even if they had a safe vaccine. So this should have never happened to Maddie DeGray. She was 12 years old. She was part of the phase 3 trial for 12 to 15-year-olds. She's now in a wheelchair and on a feeding tube. And there's a number of other children who have been harmed and disabled and killed. So then when the FDA approved the product, they said that they knew that it causes heart inflammation, myocarditis, pericarditis. They said an important potential risk is vaccine-associated related disease, which is probably why more people in the hospital with COVID-19 are vaccinated than unvaccinated, because it enhances disease. They said the missing information was vaccine effectiveness, saying they don't know if it's going to ever work in the real world. And Moderna said the same thing and actually tripled down. They said not only do we not know if it's effective, we don't know if it's long-term effective, and we don't know if it's safe. This was never disclosed in any of the materials that anyone was given. So it's supposed to prevent against infection. After the FDA approved Pfizer's injection, they did a post hoc analysis 9 months out of the injected group and 5 months out of the placebo group was injected. And the analysis said it appears that the risk of COVID-19 injection increases over time post-dose 2. So it causes infection. This is a study of 51,000 employees at Cleveland Clinic, and it shows that in 2 doses, your risk for infection over a 3-month period triples. And if you had more than 3 doses, it quadruples. So this absolutely causes infection. Also, in regards to workers, there was a bivalent study that was done, and it showed after people got the bivalent booster, 1 out of 5 couldn't go to work to the next day, or potentially, who knows how long. The efficacy is based on 170 people. 170 people out of 42,000 in total, and the 2 study groups were 18 to 18, so 36,000. What this means is that if you got the injection, you had a 1% risk of not getting infected 2 months out. If you didn't get it, you had, less than a 1% infection of not getting infected, and your reduction in risk between both groups was less than 1%. Clinically, it means nothing. Statistically, it is insignificant. And I think just one of the other things I was going to show is that here in Florida, if I could go back. Here in Florida, and I think people believe in July of 2021, was when Biden did the mandate, the COVID-19 mandate. The excess mortality rate from the Society of Actuaries showed that Florida was hit the hardest in Q3 of 2021 when the mandate went into place, almost a 200% increase in overall mortality. The vaccines are not working. And the group that's hit the hardest is actually young working adults over the country. So an experimental biological agent that does not prevent disease, does not protect against disease, was done under deceptive and criminal research and actually causes harm is technically a biological weapon. And more people are becoming aware of this. I just want you to show the commissioners here that you can see per Pfizer's public filing. They produce the spike protein, Wuhan Institute of Virology spike protein. That's what the vaccine does. Pfizer says on their website, the mRNA turns the human cells into manufacturing bioweapon facilities because the spike protein actually is the bioweapon. And it crosses the blood-brain barrier, kidneys, heart, lungs, tongue, and into the brain and spinal cord. And under Florida state law, basically a biological agent that's capable of causing death, disease, or other biological malfunction in a human is a bioweapon. So the work that was done by the CDC and the 3 government agencies was deceptive in nature. And under the guise of public health and wellness, people have been exposed to biological experimentation that is harmful. And, this is all the evidence that is available on government websites. People have simply been deceived. But once you recognize that people have been harmed under criminal and a deceptive and illegal experimental biological experimentation, it's important to acknowledge that a crime has been committed and people are going to be held to account. And the residents of Collier County, as Surgeon General Ladapo said, have the right to know this information. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, sir. We have 14 public speakers. Your first speaker, and I'm going to call more than 2 names at a time because we have people in both of our overflow rooms right now. So if they're there, they're going to need time to get over here. Your first speaker is Carol DiPaolo, followed by Beth Sherman, then Lisa Johnson, and then Barry Huey.
Yeah, I'll remind the speakers, we already have a motion on the floor and a second heading in a direction that's clear, I believe. But we want citizens to be heard, as we said at the start of the meeting, and they will be.
Good morning, commissioners, county officials, and members of our community. My name is Carol DiPaolo. I am chairman of the Medical Freedom Subcommittee of the CCREC and a resident of Naples. I want to thank Commissioner Coble, Commissioner Saunders, Commissioner LaCastro, Commissioner McDaniel, and Commissioner Hall for your time. I don't envy your position as commissioner. It's a difficult one. You must at times make serious decisions that affect the lives of many. Like a famous king in the greatest book ever written, King Solomon, who is known for his wisdom in making decisions, I hope that today you will have the wisdom of Solomon to make a wise ruling in this proceeding. We know that Collier County was the only county in Florida that applied for the Extra Mile Migrant Farm Workers COVID-19 grant and received funds in the amount of $1.2 million from the NIH CDC. We know that the funds went to subrecipient Partners in Health that provides health care and health education for the underprivileged in the Immokalee area. We know that in the written CDC material distributed by Partners in Health to this underserved population, there is information pertaining to the COVID-19 injections. We know that the information states the injections are safe and effective. We know that this is misleading information since the vaccines are neither safe nor effective. We know that our Florida Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, strongly recommends that healthy children and males between the ages of 18 and 39 do not be administered these shots because they are not safe. We know that a vaccine is supposed to prevent disease transmission, and is supposed to do no harm. We know that these shots do not meet this definition. We know that these shots have been harmful to many. I would like to ask just 3 questions, and these questions will be directed not to the commissioners, but to the people in this room. How many of you know someone who took the COVID-19 shots? Raise your hand, please.
No, speak to us, ma'am, please.
Okay.
We're not taking votes.
How many of you know someone who...
Ma'am, you're speaking to us, we're not taking votes.
Okay. The last question that I really have to say is, well, how many of you commissioners know someone who regrets taking the shots? How many of you know someone who has been injured by taking the COVID-19 injections? Okay. And this I just have to say, if you strongly recommend that our commissioners return the $1.2 million, I would just hope that maybe people would stand up and show their support to this. I implore every commissioner to listen to your constituents, understand our concern for those in our community that do not have a voice, the migrant farm workers and the underprivileged. Hear our plea to break our ties with the NIH CDC and return the funds. Please make a wise decision today. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Beth Sherman. She'll be followed by Lisa Johnson, Barry Huey, and then Scott Sherman.
We're going to hear from Mrs. Sherman, and then we're going to take our 10:30 break and then resume with the public speakers.
I actually had time conceded to me from Miss Lisa, who's next. If you can double check that.
She did not indicate that in any way, but is she here? Miss Johnson, are you here? I will cede her your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chris Hall, for allowing Karen Kingston time to speak and putting this back on the agenda. And thank you to 4 out of the 5 of you commissioners who took the time to meet with Karen. We very much appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner Cowell. You asked some really great questions at the last meeting, and we truly appreciate that, especially your comments today. I'd like to start by apologizing to all 5 of you, which may come as a surprise, but I would like to say that angerness and bitterness has really come over me in the past couple years after I've been up here so many times fighting and putting a lot of this information on the record that Ms. Karen Kingston has told you today. None of this information that she's presented to you is new. So you cannot say that you didn't know any of this. It's really sad that you guys have completely ignored us. until now. I want to thank the 2 new commissioners. It took getting 2 new commissioners up there to get this back on the agenda and to have our voices heard, so thank you very much. And in the spirit of Valentine's Day, you know, some people at the beginning were talking about love. Well, to me, love is truth, so this is kind of impromptu, but Mr. Jamie here from Partners in Health, you know, it seems like you guys, whether you send the money back or not, it seems to me that you plan on still working with Partners in Health. They've been in the community for 40 years. Let me tell you a little bit about Partners in Health and who they're run by. They're run by a man whose name is Jim Young Kim. He is the former director of the WHO. He was the 12th president of the World Bank. He was nominated by Hillary Clinton and appointed by Obama. Let me tell you some of the partners that fund Partners in Health. And I keep getting, called misinformation. This is all public information. If you go to Partners in Health website, you can pull all of this up that I'm speaking about. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the CDC, Open Societies, which is George Soros, Facebook, Google, Pfizer, and nearly every other pharmaceutical company that there is, the World Bank, Disney, the insurance companies, and most of the biotech companies, the WHO, the U.S. Department of State, and the United Nations. Is that really an organization that we need in our county? Regardless of what happens today with the money being sent back, Partners in Health needs to take a hike out of this community. This is the most conservative county in the state of Florida, and we don't want to be doing business. Let me tell, one other thing, Chelsea Clinton is actually on their board. I find that interesting. And there are some other people on the Partners in Health board who are on the board for the Clinton Foundation. Let me tell you one thing that Partners in Health has done in the past 2 years with the COVID money. They partnered with Healthcare Network and other businesses, other NGOs who, for the moment, shall remain nameless. But some of you remember when this all started out in Immokalee, that the case numbers were driven up and a big panic had ensued because there were so many positive cases in the county, right? Let me tell you how they did that. They took a bunch of money and they offered the people in Immokalee, if they had a positive case, positive COVID test that they brought forward, they received $400 to $1,200 per person for that positive case. And they rushed the funds so that they received it within 5 to 10 days. So that, my friends, that is how the case numbers started in this community. This is not an organization that I personally, along with we the people, want to have anything to do with in this community. If you go back on their website and look at all the research and all the work that they've been doing across the world in the third world countries, it's pretty nefarious, my friends. Like, all you have to do is actually read. People want to know where I get all this information. I read. It's not hard. Go to their website. I implore everybody, go to their website. Click around a few times, spend 15 minutes on there, and you can verify every single thing that I've said here today. Now, according to Karen's data that she provided to you in your email, she stated that 90% of people in Collier County got 1 shot, and 70% of people received 2 shots or more. We know that there's a lot of people who have died or have suffered adverse events. I personally know several people. I know someone who died in their sleep. I know people who have had serious reactions. All of that was in the Pfizer paperwork. What we don't know is what the long-term side effects will be. Our county and sheriff, we need to work together as a team to stop the distribution of this within our county. We need to stop taking government grants that tie us to evil. We need to stop using subcontractors like Partners in Health, and boy, I'll have a list of other ones that I recommend we stop working with because they're funded by the globalist agenda. This county signed on to Agenda 21, the contract in the 90s with the United Nations. I think it's high time as a county we stop doing business with criminals, including, but not limited to, the United Nations, the CDC, the WHO, the WEF, the DOJ, and the FBI. I know that this county personally has other contracts that I have fought in the past 2 years with the DOJ and FBI. I'll be bringing that back at a later date because it's unrelated to this. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Many of you are retired military, and with the evidence that you have been presented, I ask you to uphold your vow to protect our country from all invaders, foreign and domestic. With that said, we want you to void the contract and send back all the money. Like Commissioner LaCasher said, let's just wash our hands clean of this. Ephesians 5:14, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Thank you.
We're going to take a break, but just for clarification, the other folks that are signed up to speak, we have a motion on the floor in a second, and I believe Commissioner Hall, rather than me summarize the motion as I believe it to be, why don't you restate it for the crowd, the motion you made, and that was seconded?
Motion was to send the money back, all of it, and cancel the grant.
Right, and that was seconded, and I can't speak for the other commissioners, but I support that extremely strongly. So does Commissioner McDaniel. So we don't want to close. We want to hear from if you want to speak, but if you don't feel it's necessary or you're going to be redundant with other speakers. But we're going to take a break and come back at 10:45. Take a 10-minute break. Thank you. If everybody could please take their seats. Please take your seats. We'd like to get started on time. Thank you.
How's that working out?
Mr. Chairman, your next registered speaker is Barry Hoey. He'll be followed by Pastor Anthony Thomas, then Scott Sherman, and then Jill Kiley.
Okay. Please take your seats. Everybody talking in the back, appreciate it if you please take your seats. Before we get started with our next speaker, it's clear we have a motion on the floor, a strong one. It's been seconded. I've already said that I concur with the motion and the second. Not here to stifle any citizens, but I want to hear from the other two commissioners if they would like to make a comment on the motion and the second. Commissioner Colwell?
I was going to second it, and when we had the new motion on the floor, I was going to second it myself, but I got beat to the punch.
I jumped in front of you?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll wait for Commissioner Saunders. But I only say that so speakers are welcome to be heard. We're not stifling anyone. But if something's about to pass and it meets with your approval, then you don't feel like you need to speak at the podium. Fine. If you still want to be part of the process and be heard, that's fine too. Obviously, if I can have everyone's attention, can I have everyone's attention, please? Or if you're in opposition to what the vote might be, then we want you to be able to take the podium. But it's obvious that if it looks like we're about to have a unanimous decision on something the citizens have taken time to bring to our attention, and it's going to go a certain way, then you might not feel the need to just be redundant in comments that have already been heard that have been very influential in our possible unanimous vote. Commissioner Saunders?
I missed the first part, and I apologize. I was running into the room here. I'm going to support the motion. I suspect that it probably will be a unanimous vote based on the conversation. So if there's an issue of perhaps shortening the public comment a little bit so we can move on to some other items, that's fine with me. I am going to vote for the motion.
Yeah. So just to summarize, we're not going to do anything sort of half speed here. The motion is full return. There's no strings, there's no after effects, and the people have been heard, the commissioners have listened, and so it looks like, talking to all of my colleagues here, that we've got a motion, a second, and what looks to be a unanimous vote when I call for it. Having said that, sir, the podium's yours, and if you choose to speak, then we are all ears.
Thank you. My name is Barry Hoey. As many know, I'm a real estate broker here in Southwest Florida, and one thing I've noticed since 2020 and when the pandemic started, the amount of people wanting to move here to Southwest Florida, and the reason for that is because they trust that when they move here, that everybody is going to be doing the right thing. They see Southwest Florida as a place where our freedoms are valued, where our politicians will do, or representatives will do good work on their behalf. I was shocked, as were many, to learn that Collier County had received funds from the CDC at the time. If you look at the big picture with all of this, it's very clear, it should be very clear to everybody that Fauci lied, Birx lied. All of this has been, this has been going on for many years. I won't get into that. I don't want to look like a conspiracy theorist, but what I will tell you is that conspiracy theorists have proven to be right, especially in the last number of years. All of these three-letter agencies that have become corrupted with the different cabals across the world, the CDC, gave this money to Collier County, and Collier County, we talk about people that are vulnerable in our society. We have kids. These farm workers are vulnerable because the pandemic created fear, and through fear, people will do things and take things. As regards the motion, it's definitely important, I believe, that all of the funds be returned, no strings attached whatsoever. And we need to send a message out that Collier County is where medical tyranny comes to die. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Pastor Anthony Thomas. He'll be followed by Scott Sherman, then Jill Kiley, and then Richard Schroeder.
If you're a speaker and you decide you don't want to speak, then just let Mr. Miller know.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. My name is Pastor Anthony Thomas. I'm a local pastor been a pastor for almost 20 years, and I'm a Marine Corps veteran and a proud patriot of this country. I want to share something very clearly. This is the first meeting I have gone to. The Lord put on my heart to come here, and I'm going to share what he put to say. The Bible is very clear. It says the devil comes to steal, kill, and to destroy. We have seen clearly that the CDC is a nefarious organization that has taken our posterity in the generations to come and done exactly those things: steal, kill, and destroy. The Bible says very clearly, you shall not pollute the land where you are, for blood defiles the land. We have seen clearly that there has been an exchange by governments and different pharmaceutical companies for money for the sake of blood. And I would share clearly today, each one of you have been given a measure of authority, and one day you will have to stand before the Lord, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and give an account of the authority that you've been given. And the Bible is very clear. When blood is on the land, it defiles it. God has put a blessing upon this land, and I'm asking you today, send this blood money back in entirety, that the blessing of the Lord might rest on the city of Naples. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.
Your next speaker is Scott Sherman. He'll be followed by Jill Kiley, Richard Schroeder, and then Scott Kiley.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. My name is Scott Sherman. I'm going to be very brief. I'm not going to rehash this issue, but I want to comment on a couple things that were said from the dais this morning. One of the things is that the idea that the government shouldn't be involved in health care, we applaud that. Two, federal money is our money, so it doesn't really make much difference between Collier County money, or because we pay the taxes, and our federal government has been wasting our tax money for years. So that being said, and then just be careful of following advice of these global institutions, because they are truly evil and do not represent the ideas and morals of Collier County. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Jill Kiley. She'll be followed by Richard Schroeder, then Scott Kiley, then Lisa, it's either Brates or Bates.
Good morning. Is it still morning? Yes, it is. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. My name's Jill Kiley, and I'm a resident of Marco Island. The COVID-19 Response for Resilient Communities grant had a goal to provide accessible and equitable health care to high-risk communities. In review of the data provided to us by Collier County Health Services, it focused on a dual message: get vaccinated and wear a mask. We have evidence from the Pfizer's own reports that the so-called vaccine is neither safe or effective in preventing or transmitting COVID-19. Additionally, the recently released Cochrane report cites 19 studies with 71,000 people showing that there is no clear reduction in respiratory viral infection with the use of masks. We know that there are many prophylactic measures to support our immune system that can be used to prevent COVID-19, influenza, and RSV infections. These protocols were available since early 2020 and have been used by prominent healthcare providers around the world and helped many thousands of people. If early intervention and reduction of the spread of COVID-19 was the goal, why are there no preventative or early intervention measures mentioned in the materials presented to us by Collier County Health Services? Is it just me? Or do the rest of you think this is appalling? Perhaps the injection bus could have given out ivermectin and a preventative handout in their goodie bags, like they did in Africa and India, which, by the way, are the two countries with the lowest vaccine uptake and lowest rate of death. This was not a prevention campaign. This was a misinformation and a jab in every arm campaign. The fraudulent and deceptive manner that our health officials have conducted themselves, with lack of informed consent, bullying, and no discussion of vaccine risks of disease, bodily damage, and death, is inconceivable. To say that this has been a crime of mass proportions waged on our people is a huge understatement. 70% of the population of Collier County is fully vaccinated, and the makers knew that the more injections of this experimental shot that are taken, the greater the risk for disease and death. In summary, the people of Collier County were duped, and they need to be given appropriate warnings of this injection on our county website and where to go for treatment for their injuries. Please, Commissioners, do not subject any more of our citizens to these injections and injuries. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Richard Schroeder. He'll be followed by Scott Kiley, then Lisa Brates, then Emily, I'm going to say Dalto. I can't read your last name, Emily.
I just want to just chime in again, and it's just more for clarification. So we have a time certain at 10 o'clock for David Lawrence Center, and there's a lot of people here that just like everybody else took time out to be here for the time certain, and we're well past it. I just tell everyone again on this issue, you have 5 commissioners here that have a motion on the floor to unanimously give back all of the money to the max, no strings, no nothing. If there's still a dozen more speakers to speak, I feel the need to go to our time certain, which is an hour late. So if you are coming to the podium to tell us what we've already heard and we're about to vote unanimously on, it's your right. But I think in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to go to the other group that has a right to hear a very large topic as well, which had a 10 a.m. time certain even before this one. So, Doctor, I'll turn the floor over to you. But there again, I just
I'm gonna end it. But I want to tell you, I have some non-duplicative material. I know that you commissioners are going to want to hear, but I want to get to a vote, and I think this is where we need to go today. If you promise to hear me out at a future meeting on this non-duplicative material.
Would you be kind enough to email it to us?
Yeah, certainly. I can.
Glad to read it.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it, Doc.
Yes, it has to do with where the bioweapon actually came from, how it was developed by the Department of Defense, and so on. So it's very important to understand the background of all this.
Perfect.
So,
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. We'll come back.
Your next speaker is Scott Kiley, followed by Lisa Braitz, and then Emily Dalto and Diane. Wow.
He's waving.
He's waving.
Kylie waved.
Thank you. Lisa Braitz?
Good morning. Hello, Commissioners. I'm not going to be redundant. Just want to say thank you for your time and thank you for your vote. But I'm standing here because I just thought that there was one thing I needed to point out. I know that Ms. Maggie Lopez went through her presentation pretty quickly. I don't know if anybody saw because she didn't state, but at the bottom there were a lot of bullet points. I know you all have the presentation. The bullet points were very clear that money has to be used for COVID. So I don't think it could be diverted to other things as stated. That's my point. I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Emily Dalto. I hope I'm reading that right.
Thank you.
Diane, is it Smars?
I think she's in the ante room.
She may be Omar Del Pollo. And he would be followed by Andrea Verder.
Good morning, Commissioner. My name is Omar Del Pozo Marrero. I am a former political prisoner and doctor.
Sir, could you slow down a little bit, please? She has to take down everything you're saying.
Of course. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Congratulations to all the board for the great job you are doing and you will do. I strongly encourage you to send this money back. Simple. This money represents probably the biggest lie in the history of the United States. The so-called COVID-19 has caused a lot of hurt in our country, in health, in economy, in everything. Shortly, what happened? Everything is a lie. The so-called vaccine is not really a vaccine. A vaccine is when some people inject a virus, attenuated virus, live virus, thank you, or part of the virus, or virus or bacteria attenuated. So the body, in response, produces antibody. In this case, the mRNA is not real. The normal mRNA we have in our body has a time to work. The work, the mRNA, normally we have, what the mRNA do is produce protein. But what happened? Our body has a control. So the mRNA has to live a short time in order to finish this production of protein. This so-called vaccine is fake, it's artificial. So this vaccine escapes to the normal control of our body in the cell, in the cytoplasm. So it produces a lot of protein without control and produce inflammation at all levels. And this produces what it causes now. Please, send this money back because we live in the more free country in the United States. God bless you. God bless America. Happy Valentine's Day for you and for everybody here.
Your next speaker, we'll try Emily Dalto again. Diane Smars. Andrea Verder. Okay, if they're coming from another room, I do have one registered speaker on Zoom, so let's try them at this point. Dr. Yakos, you should be getting prompted to unmute yourself here shortly, if you will do so, sir. Dr. Yarko, there you are. Sir, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm here.
You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, well, my name's Dr. Yakos. I've been a cardiologist and I've been practicing at the front lines since the beginning of COVID. I was in the heart of it in New York, and it was terrible to see so many people die. But they died primarily because people were being denied therapies and people were being treated with a protocol that was untested. And honestly, that was a real crime. Right now, I don't know how many people know this, but as of last week, 16 studies have now confirmed that ivermectin can prevent serious COVID disease. And yet it was being denied completely to the population at that time, including the healthcare workers. That being said, there's one bigger crime than what happened during COVID, the infection, and that is COVID, the vaccination. To me, this will surpass the amount of deaths that we saw from COVID itself. The amount of heart disease that's being seen, the amount of reactivation of cancers, the amount of people having strokes, the amount of people actually having clots. This is an ongoing problem. And it's not just the young people that are dying suddenly. I think older people are also dying as suddenly, but for some reason that's not as newsworthy, and that's really a pity. That's really a shame. And I think it's very important that people understand that we're dealing with a deadly, deadly experimental drug that got pushed through for money reasons, and we should not be propagating this problem. So whatever you may think the money might be getting used for, very clearly it's being used for spreading this vaccination further to a population that is being blindsided. They don't know the information. In fact, I would say most Americans are still having a hard time hearing the information. So we would like the commissioners to understand why we have such great, we have no money to gain in making this argument. And yet some of the companies that are looking to make this money and use it are not using it for the purposes of getting people better. That's just the excuse that they're using to get them access to the money. And I don't want our county to be compromised ethically, morally, just because money is being thrown in our direction to use a deadly weapon, which is the vaccine and not COVID itself. And that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, sir, let me call these last two names just to see if they were an overflow. Emily Dalto and Diane Smares. Oh, okay. That takes care of it, sir.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, I just have one comment, and it's just more to clear the record than anything. Mr. Ulmer is the executive director of the healthcare network and an important part of our community, and not the executive director of Partners in Health. It was represented that he was, and I just wanted to clear that up.
Okay, if we have no other speakers, we have a motion on the floor to give full amount of the CDC money back, except no further funds. It's been seconded by Commissioner McDaniel. It's been confirmed by me that I support that strongly as well. I think the other two commissioners. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we need to move on quickly. We have lots of other business, so we're going to go right into our 10 o'clock, which is, I apologize to the David Lawrence Center staff. Hopefully they haven't lost any of their key speakers. Scott, have you lost anybody that you are concerned about? Okay.
Commissioners, this brings us to our time certain from 10 o'clock, companion items 9A and 9B. I'm going to read these in together, and we're going to be hearing them in tandem. This is a recommendation. 9A is a recommendation to approve an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Collier County, Florida, amending ordinance number 2004-41 as amended the Collier County Land Development Code, which established the comprehensive zoning regulations for the unincorporated area of Collier County, Florida, by amending the appropriate zoning atlas maps or maps by changing the zoning classification of the herein described real property from an estates zoning district within the Corridor Management Overlay District to a community facilities planned unit development within the Corridor Management Overlay District for a project to be known as Collier County Behavioral Health Center Community Facilities Planned Unit Development, to allow a 64,000 square foot maximum group care facility with up to 102 patient beds on property located on the north side of Golden Gate Parkway and 1/2 mile west of Santa Barbara Boulevard in Section 29, Township 49 South, Range 26 East, Collier County, Florida, consisting of 5.15 plus or minus acres, and providing an effective date. 9B is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Collier County, Florida, amending ordinance number 8905 as amended, the Collier County Growth Management Plan for the unincorporated area of Collier County, Florida, specifically amending the urban Golden Gate Estates sub-element of the Golden Gate Area Master Plan element to allow planned unit development rezoning and certain preservation requirements in the Golden Gate Parkway institutional subdistrict, an aggregate of 16.3 plus or minus acres located on the north side of Golden Gate Parkway, approximately 1/2 mile west of Santa Barbara Boulevard in Section 29, Township 49 South, Range 26 East, Collier County, Florida, and furthermore directing transmittal of the adopted amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity, providing for severability and providing for an effective date. Mr. Ed Finn, our Deputy County Manager, will begin the presentation.
Okay, Mr. Finn.
We need to swear in and do ex parte.
Okay, Mr. Finn, before you speak and before we do that, so everybody that wants to be in here, and I asked the sheriff that's out the door there, just anybody that wants to come in, they come in. Let's have order. Okay, we're transitioning now to another very important vote, and anybody that was here for the last vote for the CDC money hopefully has exited. I just appreciate if you turn your cell phones off. We had a little bit of a problem with that. We've got a lot to get to. So before the floor is yours, County Manager.
We need to swear in participants, and you need to give ex parte.
Okay, so let's swear in all those participants that need to be sworn in, please.
If you're planning on speaking, you need to be sworn in if you're registered as a public speaker.
Okay, and ex parte for the commissioner. I'll start with Commissioner Cole. Do you have anything on this topic, 9A or 9B?
Yes, I do. I have meetings, correspondence, emails, and calls.
Okay, Commissioner Saunders?
I have the same, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Hall?
All the above.
Commissioner McDaniel?
Yes, all of the above.
Same here. Everything across the board. Okay. Mr. Finn, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you, Ms. Patterson. I'm Ed Finn, Deputy County Manager. As the primary applicant for the proposed zoning actions, county staff appreciates the opportunity to introduce this item. Today I'm going to briefly describe today's zoning actions, orient us to the project location, describe the timeline that brings us to today, provide an overview of the site and the site's relationship to the current David Lawrence Center location, and then turn the presentation over to the overall team. The need for greater access to treatment for substance abuse disorders and mental health led to the Board of County Commissioners establishing the Mental Health and Addiction Ad Hoc Advisory Committee in December 2018. In December 2019, the committee's Mental Health and Addiction Services 5-year strategic plan was adopted by the board. The top priority of that strategic plan was to build and operate a central receiving facility to serve persons experiencing acute mental health and substance abuse crisis. Over the last 3 years, we have made significant progress to that goal. My primary task this morning is to introduce the team. They'll be presenting today's amendments relative to the parcel that has been selected to be the home of the Collier County Behavioral Health Center. The team includes former County Commissioner Andy Solis, Richard Yovanovich, Esquire, Jessica Harrelson, AICP from Peninsula Engineering, Javier Salazar, Principal AIA from RG Architects, and Scott Burgess, the CEO of the David Lawrence Center. Today we're here seeking approval for a small-scale growth management plan amendment. as well as a planned unit development rezone. There's some notes on this slide for you, but this will be covered more in depth as the team progresses with their presentation. The proposed site. The proposed site is 5.15 acres. It is in proximity, close proximity to I-75. It is located between I-75 and Santa Barbara Boulevard, and it is essentially quite close to and essentially co-located, in our view, with the existing David Lawrence Center location. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the timelines, other than to hit a couple of real highlights. In 2018, if I may, 2018, the board agreed to allocate $25 million of the proposed infrastructure surtax as part of the referendum on the infrastructure sales tax as a community priority project for this behavioral health center. The voters elected to tax themselves for that purpose. In February 21, at the conclusion of a formal site selection process, the board selected the location that's the subject of today's actions. In May of 21, the board approved a land purchase for that site, as well as an agreement for the new facility to be operated by the David Lawrence Center. In June 21, the Citizens Surtax Committee validated the use of infrastructure surtax for this purpose. In August 21, the board approved the design contract for the facility with RG Architects, and in April 22, the vacant land contract was amended, making Collier County responsible for the land entitlement zoning process we're being considered today. Just a little more orientation on the site. This slide gives some general background information on the future site of the Behavioral Health Center. The site is in a 16-acre Golden Gate Institutional Subdistrict that was created by ordinance in 2007 to provide for the expansion and continued operation of the David Lawrence Center. That concludes my intro to this. At this point, I'd like to turn over the presentation to the team and specifically former Commissioner Solis. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Welcome back. How, does it feel better being on that side? It does, doesn't it?
I'll be honest, it feels a little strange. But thank you for the opportunity, and thanks to Mr. Finn for that summary. And I'm really here to kind of tell the story, why we're here. When I was elected in 2016, as most of you know, and I'm sure the new commissioners are aware of, we started this whole process, bringing together the stakeholders in the community, the sheriff, NCH, the Collier County Public Schools, DLC, NAMI, Wounded Warriors, Judge Denise Martin, and others. And for me, it was about trying to get my arms around what the problem was and is. And it was worse than I understood it to be, because at that time, DLC was the only facility that we had. It was the only provider for crisis stabilization unit beds. And there was 30 for a population of almost 400,000 people. We had, by the state's own numbers, we should have had 120. We had under 10, I believe, beds for children. And to this day, we still have 0 Medicare beds for our seniors. 0. What does that mean? Well, that means, number one, that we have been using and continue to use our jail as our largest mental health facility. We'll hear from the sheriff, and he and I have spent hours talking about this. Nobody gets better in the jail. It's bad public policy. It's bad fiscal policy, because it's so much more expensive to house somebody in the jail than in a facility where they might get better and do get better. What does it mean for children? Well, if we're out of beds, and most of the time we're out of beds, children may have to go to another county. What does that mean to our children? And what does it mean for our seniors? means that we don't have a single Medicare bed. If you're a senior on Medicare or Medicaid, and you have both medical problems and you need psychiatric treatment or crisis stabilization, we have to send you to Lee County or some other county. You know, I've always said that Collier County is, you know, the greatest county to live, work, and play. We all know the motto, and we can do better, and we should do better. So, having said that, again, it's bad fiscal policy. This is a crisis that affects everybody. Everybody's affected by this. I mean, I started this process because mental health issues led to the death of both my cousin and her son. I'll just say that publicly. It is, you know, and it's something that, you know, families continue to deal with for decades and decades, maybe forever. I will like to just remind everybody of a great story. We had our first workshop in, I think it was June of 2017. And at that workshop, we had a gentleman that came and spoke. And he told the story of how he had been, I think it was a car accident. He'd become addicted to opioids. He was in and out of the jail, in and out of the David Lawrence Center, attempting suicide. But eventually, he was into the mental health court and the drug court program that Judge Martin was running. And he came and told his story, right? He gets a place to live at St. Matthew's House. They get him a job. A couple of years later, after having walked into the St. Matthew's House with a pair of flip-flops, jeans, and a T-shirt, and that's it, he told the story of how he now owned his own car, right? That was great. He was back with his family. He owned his own home, which I thought was outstanding. But then he said, I own my own business, and I have, I think it was 10 employees, and half of those he would get from the treatment court programs. That return on investment is something that is exponential for the community. It gets people back as productive members of our community, and is the kind of investment that we can make and should make. From the very beginning, we have been discussing this particular property. It was entitled almost 15 years ago, I believe, for this purpose. And we have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on studies with experts to make sure that this was the right place to do it, to build this facility. And that's why we're here today. You know, finding another location at this point would delay the opening of the facility. We already know that not having enough beds costs people their lives. Our rates of suicide have gone up. The rates of Baker Act cases have gone up. And this is the number one priority from day one, is to build this facility. And to delay it will cost people their lives. And switching gears now, I think will, maybe Mr. Finn will talk about this later, but we have spent 6 years getting here today. I would suggest that it will be at least 3 or 4 years if we need to start over with a process for the site selection. Unfortunately, I think you're going to probably be shown a video, if you haven't been shown a video already, of, you know, terrible things that happen with people that have mental illness, you know. And unfortunately, that video, I think, it reinforces why we need to do this, right? This is the solution to avoiding those kinds of tragedies, or the tragedies that I've experienced in my family. You'll hear from the sheriff that there's no public safety issue with either David Lawrence's operations now, or with the creation of this facility, and it will actually make Collier County even safer. I think, unfortunately, we know that the Planning Commission recommended denial. Unfortunately, I think they weren't privy to the amount of time and effort and reports and testimony that the Commission has heard over the last 5 or 6 years in how thoughtful a process we went through to come to this site selection. You'll hear from the community leaders, the medical community, NCH leadership, the business community, veterans organizations, law enforcement, and the philanthropic community that this is needed and it needs to be located at this site. You'll hear from residents about how needed and beneficial this facility is for them and their families. And you'll see also that all central receiving facilities in Florida are built in residential areas, not located next to a jail as has been suggested. Again, the DLC property has been intended and entitled for this purpose for almost 2 decades. So for the benefit of the community, please, I hope the Commission approves the petition in order to ensure that Collier County continues to be the best place to work and live and raise a family. It's the right thing to do at the right time in the right place. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interrupt for just a second. I'd like to suggest that the audience not applaud. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The applause doesn't add anything. There are going to be 2 different sides to this. And Mr. Chairman, I would urge that we just maintain some decorum in terms of audience participation, not have that.
Noted. Thank you. Proceed, sir.
For the record, Rich Ivanovich, we are going to spend a lot of time in our presentation setting forth why this is the right location for the proposed facilities. This location, the David Lawrence Center, has been in this location for over 45 years. They have been doing good work in this location for over 45 years. The neighborhood has been aware of the David Lawrence Center for over 45 years. And the neighborhood has been aware of proposed expansion of the David Lawrence Center for many, many, many years. As both Mr. Finn and former Commissioner Solis have mentioned, the David Lawrence Center in 2007 came forward with the sub-district that you're considering making a very minor change to, in that you're changing it to give the option for the very uses that had been previously approved since 2007 to either be approved by a conditional use or through the PUD process. So these uses are not changing. It's the manner in which you can get these uses approved on the property. Back in 2003-ish, the county took some of the David Lawrence Center property through eminent domain. And in doing so, it made the expansion of the David Lawrence Center, which has been providing the services we're here to expand at this location, could no longer do it on the existing property. So they acquired a 5-acre site, which you've seen in this exhibit and others. They acquired that 5-acre site and went through the comprehensive plan amendment process that at that time did not have a small-scale amendment process. And what does that mean? It meant that we had to go and do what was called a transmittal hearing, where it went to the state for the state to evaluate it. It came back, and then we had to go through the adoption process. So when we went through this process in 2007, we went to the Collier County Planning Commission at the first hearing to ask for these uses to be allowed on this piece of property. We then went to the Board of County Commissioners for them to say, yes, go ahead and transmit this to the state. So we had 2 public hearings as to whether or not the state should consider this location. It came back. We went back to the Planning Commission again to evaluate it again. Is this the right location for the expansion of these services? And ultimately back to the Board of County Commissioners for the 4th time, 4th public hearing as to whether or not this was the appropriate location to expand the David Lawrence Center facilities on this piece of property. So there were 4 public hearings regarding this specific piece of property as to whether or not the David Lawrence Center services should be expanded to this location. The public hearing process requires signs to be on the property, ads in the newspaper, and letters being sent. There was no mystery as to what was the intended purpose of this 5-acre site, and it was unanimously approved by the Board of County Commissioners. I would submit to you most, if not every resident in this area moved to this location after the David Lawrence Center has been on this property, and many of the people have moved there since 2007 when the expansion on this 5-acre piece had been approved through the public hearing process. I've heard the analogy, this is coming and objecting to this piece of property is like moving next door to the airport and then complaining about airplanes flying over site. I've heard that from several people. This property has been and has always been, since 2007, identified for exactly why we're here today. However, at that time, it was anticipated that it would be the private sector raising monies to provide these services, because at that time we did not have the surtax money. The uses that we're here for have been in place since 2007, the expansion of the David Lawrence Center and services related to that. In 2007, this 16-acre subdistrict actually was a partnership with the church that is in between the 2 parcels. There was cooperation about providing for ingress and egress and shared access. That church still supports this use on the piece of property. The only change is to allow for the PUD process to put this site on the property, which I will point out to you is a little bit harder process than the conditional use process. Under the conditional use process, you only have 4 criteria that you have to satisfy. Electing go through the PUD rezone made it a little bit more strenuous, but all of the public expert testimony has been in favor of this site, and that all of the criteria in the Land Development Code have been satisfied. You're going to hear that expert testimony from several of our speakers, the first of which is Jessica Harrelson. She's the professional planner on this project, and she will take you through the details of why this site is the appropriate site for the location of this facility. And then she will be followed by other speakers, again, identifying why this is the right location for these facilities. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica, unless you have any questions about the history of how this site was originally identified and approved for the expansion of these services.
Good morning, I'm Jessica Harrelson, Certified Planner with Peninsula Engineering, and I'll be reviewing the site design and the modifications that have been made to the plan through meetings with the public. So again, the request is for a group care facility with a maximum of 64,000 square feet, up to 102 patient beds. The site is located along a 6-lane arterial roadway, less than half a mile east of Interstate 75. The property is surrounded by both residential and non-residential land uses, and some of those non-residential land uses include churches, child care centers, the existing David Lawrence Center, and the Naples Bridge Center. The use is consistent with surrounding land use patterns and is also consistent with the Collier County Growth Management Plan. Setbacks are consistent with requirements in the estate zoning district, and the maximum zoned height is 45 feet, limited to 2 stories. Enhanced landscape buffers are to be provided along the north, the east, and the south. These enhanced buffers will provide screening from adjacent land uses as well as from Golden Gate Parkway. It also aids in preserving the rural character of the site. The preserved location to the north here was strategically designed to provide additional buffering to adjacent residential uses to the north. It is just less than a half acre in size and contains mature vegetation. Per the Land Development Code, walls are required between residential and non-residential uses. So per the code now, this development is required to provide a wall along the north and along the east with a maximum of 8 feet in height. A deviation was added to the PUD to increase the height to 10 feet, and that was per a direct request from a neighboring property owner from the very first public meeting that was held in May of 2022. The project team does not feel the increase in height is necessary. We've also researched other similar facilities in Florida and have not found that any of them provide 10-foot walls. Two public meetings were held following the Planning Commission's recommendation at the October 20th hearing. And as a result of those two meetings, additional commitments have been agreed to, and those include that the county will schedule security staff to visit the new facility periodically. No windows will be installed on the second story facing the east and to the north, and that will alleviate concerns of property owners thinking that patients will have views onto their properties. The county has also agreed to construct a bus shelter along Golden Gate Parkway within proximity to the site. And the new facility will be constructed with an enclosed, secure client access, which is used for patient drop-off, and the architect will provide further details and renderings on that secure access later on. And then lastly, a commitment to extend the proposed wall along the northern boundary of the entire subdistrict, which includes the existing Parkway Life Church and the existing David Lawrence Center, and the addition of a 6-foot solid fence along David Lawrence Center's western property boundary has been presented as an option. Alternatively, to construct the wall, the 10-foot wall as currently proposed with the addition of a 6-foot decorative fence along the western boundary of the subject site. The first option would require an agreement with the Parkway Life Church. Three deviations from the LDC have been requested. The first is to allow that increase in wall height that we previously discussed. The second is to deviate from the required 500-foot separation between group housing facilities. The growth management plan already permits the use on this site, so we just added this deviation to ensure there was no potential issues with proposed separation. The third deviation is to request reduce the setback from the proposed wall from preserved boundaries from 5 feet to 2 feet, and that is just so that we can install all of those enhanced plantings within those buffers facing residential development. So they will be planted on the external side of the wall. And then lastly, the traffic impact statement states there will not be any significant impacts to the roadway network because of this project. And we do have a traffic engineer here today, Norm Trebilcock, if there's any questions related to traffic. And with that, Javier Salazar with RG Architects will review building design.
Good morning, Javier Salazar with RG Architects. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the design process. So everybody knows the project was taken up to schematic design, which is about 30% of the construction of full design process. It is important to point out that these type of facilities are what we all understand as NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard type of facility. Everybody understands that there's a need for it, but are very skeptical of having it close to their houses, which it comes with any project. So with this type of project, I'm sorry. So with that said, we proposed to the team from the very beginning to make sure that we understand what are the goals of the project, not only from the internal perspective of it, but also how it affects the community. With that said, we also included one open non-required meeting with the neighbors to understand kind of what are their concerns, how can we address them. And in that, we created this series of design drivers and reference images that we shared with them at that time, in which security and safety is one of them. It's not only the security and safety of those using the facility, the staff, but also the neighborhood. We also talked about reference images. And this is not necessarily to say that the center is going to look exactly like this, but what are elements or key elements that provide that type of design that we're looking for to provide the best service. Here are some renderings of what we have come up together for the schematic design. And this is the entry looking from Golden Gate towards the building. It's mostly one story. From this profile, you have some high glazing areas for daylight. You know, as we all know, that's very important for the use of the building. Here's the main view of the entrance. This is one of the entrance. This is the public entrance, and then I'll show some more details on the secure entrance. Again, trying to create an environment that has some wood tones, some materials that soften the presence of the building, but also plays with the colors. Here's another view a little bit farther out from Golden Gate, looking towards the front of the building. Everything in the building, as you'll see later, is contained within it. So there's security in all aspects of it. There's no, outdoor open area for the users. They are all contained within the perimeter of the building. This is where we talked about the secure entrance. This is a very simple diagram. On the upper left, you see the ambulance approaching the secure entrance, whereas everything is locked. It activates, the ambulance come in on the second image. On number 3, it closes. The patient is discharged or brought into the facility, and then again opens up and exits so that the next car can come in. And this is just a quick sequence of what it would look like. Opening, coming in, closing, and then the next one comes in. As far as the landscape buffers go, that was another important requirement that we need to meet with. But not only that, as Jessica pointed out, in discussions with the neighbors, make sure that we kind of go above and beyond to satisfy their needs to the best of our abilities. So the west side is a type A buffer, which it requires canopy trees. On the north and west, we have a type B, which is canopy trees, a 10-foot wall, low canopy trees, and hedges all the way around. And then the south end would be canopy trees, hedges, everything that we discussed on the B, except for the wall. The wall would not be on the south end of it. So to kind of put everything that I just said together in a little bit easier way, Jessica, can we play the video, if you don't mind, please? And I'm just going to present a little animation of what the design is, and I think somebody's doing it.
Is this one yours or is that the end video?
Yeah. All right. So this is a little 3D animation that we did looking at the overall site, David Lawrence Center on the left, the church in the middle, and then the new facility. You can see the neighbors on the right or the east side and the north side. So as we are approaching, we're going to come down. You can kind of see the makeup of the building and kind of how it's addressing the side. The building itself is buffering the traffic on the west side from the neighbors. This is the landscape buffer. As you can see, this is the less intensive. This is the type A. As we turn towards the north and the east, it's going to get a little bit heavier. So here we are turning that corner. You can see the wall. It kind of gives you an idea of what the neighbors at the north would be seeing. There's a portion of the building that can barely be seen through the landscape, but you will notice that there are no windows in it. That's another of the elements that we're putting in so that there's no visual context. The wall and the landscape covers anything above the window so that you wouldn't be seeing, nor users will be seen into the neighborhood. Now we're looking towards Golden Gate, kind of slow down a little bit to see that main entrance, and buffer type B without the wall. Some signage. As we turn the corner, this would be the approach that you would take to enter the site and the facility itself. As you can see, there are some wood tones in there. We got the white color to make it a little less impactful, and then having some color to soften it up a little bit. As we come in, we're seeing the non-secure entrance or the public entrance. And then in the background, as we approach, you can see the secure entrance where the ambulance and the patrol car is waiting to have access to the site. And that is
about the extent of it. And with that, I'll leave it up to the next speaker.
Thank you, Javier. Edward Finn, again, Deputy County Manager. If I can. Very nice. Just going to give the board a brief overview on some sense of where we are with programming on this site. The slide you have in front of you is the current design or programming budget, thresholds, beds, et cetera, at this 30% design that Javier mentioned. This has early, let me start off by saying this design is 54,000 square feet rather than the full zoned amount. It has about 87 beds, with about 42 beds that are benefiting the facility through the co-location at this site with David Lawrence. The remaining design time is approximately 10 months, with early construction award approximately June 24, and a 2-year construction schedule. The construction cost estimate is about $29 million. This slide provides an overhead of the facility placement and the overall site layout. This slide is provided to just give the board a sense for the extensive programming effort that's been put in to develop a best practices behavioral health center layout. This slide provides a kind of a look at one of the alternatives that had been discussed previously when the site was selected. This would be an on-campus site. This is going to occupy a little less space because there is some shared benefit with parking and stormwater. However, the overall building square footage goes up to accommodate all the beds necessary to achieve our overall goals with this. The construction costs are consequently substantially higher, as is the relocation cost for facilities that are currently here on site. The schedule impact to this is probably the most difficult thing for the public to perhaps deal with, or the community to deal with. And this, in all probability, would add 39 months to the schedule that is envisioned under the current selected site. This provides the same information, kind of a blue sky siting. If we were to find a site, there's $1 million allowance for property. That's probably, at least in this market, may be a little bit low. Nonetheless, that's the proposal there. There continues to be a substantial cost delta with this alternative, given that the cost of the current site effectively to the board is a nominal amount. And again, the big impact for me is the impact on the schedule, which is estimated to be 27 months. With that, I'm going to turn over to the David Lawrence CEO, Mr. Bridges.
Good morning, commissioners. First of all, I'd like to thank you very much for being here today to continue to work with you and our community towards mobilizing this very important game-changing initiative for our community that we've been talking about for a long while. I'd also like to take a quick moment to thank the supporters who have advocated for this needed mental health center at this site by writing emails and letters, by making calls, and the great multitude of individuals that have taken time out of their busy schedules to be here wearing green in support of the green is the color for suicide prevention. It is the national color for mental health awareness, and today green is for go on this project at this site. I'll be briefly sharing with you some reasons why this is the right site. This is not an exhaustive list, but it does denote some of the key reasons why this is considered evidence-based best practice site. This is not merely my opinion. This has been and will be reinforced by those who are national policy experts, by behavioral health experts in Florida, and by our local community stakeholders. The first item is continuity of care and synergies. By having this site right next to the current campus, we will have the opportunity to have enhanced continuity of care from inpatient services into outpatient services that are just paces away. National best practice is to try to link individuals as quickly as possible into seamless support in the community after an inpatient stay. By having these locations so close to one another, we'll be able to have same-day access to outpatient care once somebody is discharged from inpatient. This is going to help break down the artificial and the real barriers that inhibit so many people in continuing their care. This is going to help with long-term prognosis, as we know, when we can seamlessly transition people across the continuum of care, their prognosis greatly increases and the outcomes increase. Secondly, integrated care. Whole person integrated care has been demonstrated to be the most effective and the most efficient form of care. By having the new behavioral health center close to outpatient services at DLC, we'll be able to link individuals in a comprehensive way and an integrated way to meet the vast majority of their needs. For example, if an individual is in the inpatient setting in the central receiving facility and they're there for a mental health related reason, many individuals may also have a co-occurring issue with substance use disorder that's discovered during that stay. By being able to link them to the outpatient center, which is just paces away, we'll be able to attend to the mental health needs of that individual, the substance use disorder needs of that individual, and we also have a pharmacy, a specialty behavioral health pharmacy on that campus called Genoa Pharmacy. That pharmacy allows for individuals to be able to come there and receive the needed medications to help support their long-term wellness. This offers a seamless approach to attending to individuals' comprehensive aftercare needs. These factors associated with continuity of care and integrated care benefits are of the most paramount reasons why locating or co-locating central receiving centers next to or embedded with existing community mental health centers is done in every central receiving facility in Florida. And it's why it's considered national evidence-based practice. Thirdly, it's a centralized location. We are at that location essentially in the very center of Collier County, which you all know is very expansive. So we are the closest location to the vast majority of individuals that would be coming to the center for services. We are also conveniently located right next to two major thoroughfares, I-75 and Golden Gate Parkway. This allows for effective and efficient transport to care and ease of transport for first responders to be able to have somebody admitted and be able to get right back on the road helping Collier County residents. Next, it's a familiar and preferred site. DLC has been known to provide these services to Collier County for almost 50 years. We're known by individuals, we're known by families, we're known by potential referral sources, general practitioners, family care practitioners. When individuals are going through a crisis state, one of the things you want to do is try to minimize the amount of things that can be confusing. By having a familiar location, that's going to be very helpful for individuals. And when I say preferred location, one of the things that we've done in this process, which you've heard about briefly, is we wanted to engage stakeholders, consumers that may use this service. And we had a focus group that was done at the National Alliance for Mental Illness. And they did a survey, and the vast majority of the consumers, those that may be using the center here or their family members, the vast majority of them preferred this site location, indicating that they felt that it was therapeutic, it was community integrated, it was trusted, and it was effective and efficient for them. Cost-effective approach. We are donating the land to the county in order for this building to be built. Therefore, we know that in order to maximize the footprint of the building and the bed capacity of the building, if we can take some of those costs off the table, the land costs, that's going to be beneficial. Additionally, as was discussed just briefly before, it allows for maximizing treatment bed capacity. We're going to be able to keep some of the services that were originally envisioned to be in this building on our current campus. This will allow for, the proximity will allow for significant operations and some personnel synergies that will be gained. By having it closely located to the current DLC campus, we're going to be able to keep the children's services in our current location and our detox services. Therefore, in totality, we're going to end up gaining more beds. And this project is not only, at this site, is not only going to help us gain more beds, it's going to allow us to gain the right beds. Inpatient, what was shared with former Commissioner Andy Solis before was that Medicare, folks that have Medicare benefits for the longest while have been sent out of Collier County for their support. We'd love to be able to keep them here, and through the new building, we will be able to have an inpatient hospital component that will allow those folks to be able to stay in our community. We'll also be able to have some separation between adults receiving their mental health support, inpatient, and children and families having a nice, comfortable location that's in a proximate but separate location. And the new design will also allow us to have sub-specialization of populations. Right now, we have a situation in which we have a large one-unit situation for adults receiving inpatient mental health care. In the new building, we're designing it such that we're going to have pods or units of 15 beds that will be specialized. Maybe a unit for the seniors, a unit for those that are struggling mostly with substance use disorders, a unit that's for those that are struggling with semi-acute mental health challenges versus highly acute mental health challenges. So for those reasons, we know that this is going to both maximize treatment bed capacity as well as getting us the right capacity and the right beds. And then lastly, this use is permitted on this site, which you've already heard about. It was permitted in the growth management plan. It was permitted under the institutional subdistrict that was provided for in 2007 that allowed for this site to have expansion for these services and to have it associated in the actual language in association with David Lawrence Center. Most recently, in February of 21, the Commission affirmed this site as the central receiving facility site. The team that's been assembled here before you has been working tirelessly since that date to design and realize this vital community project. We are ready to go at this site. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we have a speaker that has to leave at noon, and she's on Zoom. Would you mind if we took her right now, and then I'll do
Absolutely, yeah. And I'd like to break around 12:15 on schedule,
That'll
so
be-
if you can
we'll be able
plan
to
it
do
around that.
It's Melody Brown-Woofter is
Melanie Brown-Woofter. All right, my Zoom people. We're going to call Melanie Brown-Woofter to speak at this time. Give me just a minute here. I think we caught him a little off guard at the moment. Mr. Jovanovich, the people doing my Zoom here.
Sorry about that, Mr. Miller.
That's... Okay, there we go. No, that was the wrong person. Melanie Brown-Woofter. My IT people are not responding to me at the moment, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry about this. I don't believe I can unmute her myself. I cannot. Okay, now they're responding. All right, Ms. Woofter, stand by. We're prompting you to unmute yourself. You are unmuted at this point, Ms. Woofter. Brown-Woofter, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you to each of the commissioners for hearing this incredibly important issue and for listening to the presentations that have been made so far. I'm the president and CEO of the Florida Behavioral Health Association. I'm also chairman of the National Association's Public Policy for Mental Health and Substance Use Disorders. And I'd like to say today that the Central Receiving Facility is a first of its kind in the nation. Florida is leading the way in the way that we provide mental health and substance use treatment services. There are 10 communities in Florida who have invested in central receiving. All of them report an immediate positive impact and return on investment. And each of them have continued to make investments in their central receiving facility for sustainability and for growth. We know last year in Florida alone, over 43,000 unique individuals received a service through central receiving facilities. 93% of those who were diverted from an acute care stay received a link to services immediately. We broke the cycle for those who were attending. In addition, we're now seeing a 4-minute drop-off time for law enforcement, which means that law enforcement has more time to be able to attend to the needs of the community. And we know from the public hospital perspective that over 9,300 individuals were successfully diverted from emergency department services and from acute care hospital admissions. So I come to you today in full support of this concept, and David Lawrence Center has been a true partner to the community, and the build of this facility is a step forward for all of Collier County. Thank you for your time.
We have a brief video that we'd like to play to summarize how we got to where we are and why this is the right location for this facility. Are you helping me, Mr. Miller?
Yeah. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
David Lawrence Centers has provided these services at its Golden Gate Parkway location for nearly 50 years. The location was unanimously approved by Collier Commissioners in 1976. Since then, DLC has continued to expand on that campus as demand has increased.
The needed facility out there. It's got the support of just about everybody and his brother from one end of the community to the other. I make a motion for approval.
Second.
In 2007, Collier Commissioners unanimously approved a sub-district that allowed for the future expansion of these services on the 5-acre parcel near DLC.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it 5-0.
Motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's approved.
In 2018, the Collier Commissioners unanimously approved the allocation of $25 million of the proposed sales surtax for the construction of a new central receiving facility. Later that year, voters approved the surtax to fund the project.
No one is immune to mental illness and substance abuse. And as a community, we need to coalesce with this. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign, so moved.
In 2019, the County Commission formally created a behavioral health ad hoc committee comprised of healthcare, social service, law enforcement, education, and justice system professionals, as well as mental health advocates. The ad hoc committee developed the county's first ever mental health and addiction services strategic plan. The plan's #1 priority is to build the new Collier County Central Receiving Facility. The plan was unanimously approved by commissioners in 2019. In February 2021, Collier Commissioners unanimously voted to approve the 5 acres near DLC as the location for the Central Receiving Facility.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, carries unanimously.
In May 2021, Collier Commissioners unanimously voted to approve a lease and operating agreement with DLC for the Central Receiving Facility at that location and authorize county staff to move forward with requests for proposals to design the facility.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No. Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, it carries unanimously.
The need to expand and the process for how best to expand has involved community input through public hearings, strategic planning sessions, and community workshops for many years. This process and the results have been widely communicated in the media and through the county. 1 in 5 of us will experience a mental illness in a given year. Those in need are our sons, daughters, neighbors, and loved ones.
About 11 o'clock at night, I got a call from Chloe's best friend, and she said that Chloe had cut and she was unable to stop the bleeding. She had cut 30-something times on her leg and had gashing wounds.
I didn't start cutting right away. It helped more of as like a release, like an immediate release, not like something that would take over time to heal. It was that exact moment, that exact relief, that exact release.
I was in such a bad place. I was in a bathroom with a bottle in front of me and a needle in my hand, ready to kind of end it all. When I started drinking around age 12, it was only on the weekends. But as I progressively got worse, I was smoking pot, experimenting with cocaine, to my very last point where I was shooting cocaine, shooting heroin, and anything I could get to put in my system to make me feel better.
My deepest fear was his death. I watched him do terrible things to himself, the destruction of his body and his mind, the destruction of our family unit.
I discovered on social media that every time I went on there's a lot of pressure to be this perfect filtered image, and that's not life, and that's not what I want my expectations to be.
The hardest part about, in hindsight, dealing with my daughter's depression, suicidal thoughts, self-harm, was not having the answers and not being able to help her. I took her to the David Lawrence Center at that point. I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that we were getting so dangerously close to losing her.
So 3 years ago today, I was in a really dark place. I was in this hole, and today it's a lot brighter, happier, and I have a new look on life.
Family today is stronger than it's ever been. There's been so much growth that has happened. The communication is open. We don't judge each other. So if Chloe or anyone else in our family is feeling this way, we now know how to help them. And we are that positive ending. We're the happy ending. And I feel so blessed.
It gave me hope. It gave me hope for a future for him, a future for me, and the impact then it's had on our family.
The life that I have now is beyond my wildest dreams. The gratitude and the feelings that I have for my life today, for my family's life today, the fact that I'm a part of my family today, the fact that I have everything that I ever wanted today because of coming into David Lawrence Center.
Since it's my turn, I'm going to say something. 5 years ago, we started a community process to bring together the stakeholders in the community to try to do things differently in Collier County, because we can and we should. And that culminated in this board approving unanimously the Mental Health and Addiction Strategic Plan. The number one priority of which was the construction of a central receiving facility. That was a promise to the community. It was a promise to families, to children, to the business community, the schools. It was a promise that I feel that the board made to the community. And unfortunately, this was continued. I'm not sure why it was continued at this point, but it was continued, so it won't be heard today. And I won't be here to continue to start the cheers and at least do what I can do to make this happen. So I'm asking the board to, make good on that promise. We need to make good on the promise that we made to the community. So with having said that, and I hope the next board does that, because it's that important.
Commissioners, that's the conclusion of our presentation, that this is the right location, and now is the time to fulfill the promise. With that, we're available to answer any questions you may have.
We're about 10 minutes away from taking a break. Do you have any speakers that you think wouldn't be able to return in 60 minutes?
Okay. Yeah. Garrett Richter, a couple.
Okay, I mean, I'd like to give those people a chance to speak, just so you've got all the people that you wanted to speak.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'll just have them come up and try to grab their slips out of here. I know Mr. Richter, and I'll recognize Mr. Morton as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'd hoped to start my comments off with good morning, commissioners, but I'll adjust that to good afternoon, commissioners. We heard this morning from Rich Jovanovich that this site was permitted in 2007. As I look at our commissioners here, I recall in 2007, our community was honored to have Commissioner Saunders as our state senator. And I had the opportunity when Commissioner Saunders termed out of the Florida State Senate to succeed him in the Senate. And when I termed out 8 years later, I was succeeded by a wonderful person that represents us now, the Senate President, Kathleen Pasadomo. And so one of the objectives I have here today is to read a letter. Senator Pasadomo, the Senate President, can't be here, but they've asked that I present her comments. And this was a letter that was sent on January 12th to you, Chair LaCastro. I'm writing to you today to express my support for amending the Collier County Land Development Code to allow for the construction of a new behavioral health center along Golden Gate Parkway. I strongly support the efforts of the David Lawrence Center and Collier County to improve citizens' access to mental health care in our county. David Lawrence Center has seen an increasing number of patients as Collier County continues to grow, and as a result, they have an increasing need for more space to treat those patients. The new facility is projected to contain 100 new crisis beds, more than doubling David Lawrence Center's capacity to treat our local area's most vulnerable and allowing those who need support to stay in their local community. In addition, the new center will act as a central receiving facility for Collier County, providing local law enforcement, governments, hospitals, and citizens immediate specialized care at a single location. The Golden Gate Parkway location is particularly suited for this purpose due to its central position in the county and its proximity to Interstate 75. It is for these reasons that I support the approval of the amendment to the Land Development Code to allow for the construction of a new behavioral center. Sincerely, Kathleen Pasadomo. And we all know we have these telephones that we use, and I rely on my phone for information that I don't have. So I asked Siri, before my comments here, I asked Siri if she would please define the term common sense for me. Siri came back and said, common sense is good sense and sound judgment in practical matters. Given the information you've received today, the centralized location, the familiar location, the cost effectiveness, the land being donated and ready to go, I would say this fits that definition. And I hope that you all vote with a good sense and sound judgment on this practical matter. Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Mr. Ed Morton.
Thank you. Good morning. Many of you have, we've known each other for many, many years. Some of us, I have not had the pleasure of sitting down talking specifically with you as individuals. My background, for 35 years, I worked for NCH. I retired as a CEO. I then undertook a 15-year career in ownership of a business partnership on Fifth Avenue. My wife and I have spent the last 50 years here in Collier County. I was raised in Islamorada, Florida, so I'm a Keys conch, so to speak. I'm also a military veteran. I'm also a past sheriff's commissioner. I have seen up close and personal and experienced a lot of things in life, and mental health is one of those, and traumatic events and what some of us have done and seen has an impact on all of our lives and those of us around us. Wherever the tissue of our life is woven with relationships. And those relationships take on a life of their own, and mental health takes on a life of its own. I've had the experience of a family member, one of my children, to suffer acute mental illness, and David Lawrence was there to help them. There's very little that I could add to what I thought was a pretty dramatic presentation, but I will add this thought. A delay of this project will have a cost. And many people will talk about the cost to the taxpayer of a failed attempt to build this building, albeit 4 or 5 years beyond when it was first approved by the taxpayers. And that cost will be to the taxpayers. But there's another cost, far more important, and that is the cost in human life and dignity. Because losing 2 or 3 years is going to be paid for by people that suffer from mental illness. And you have within your grasp today the opportunity to acknowledge and to recognize not only the economic cost, but the cost in human dignity. Because it is only in caring for each other that we care for ourselves. Thank you.
Your next speaker is going to be Dr. Rebecca Smith, and then I believe the last person that I've gotten so far from Rich is Linda McKinnon.
Okay, and then we'll break after that speaker.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Dr. Rebecca Smith. I am currently the president of Collier County Medical Society. I speak on behalf of the CCMS Board of Directors and our legislative team in support of proceeding with the current pre-approved plan to build the central receiving facility at the David Lawrence Center's campus. Our local Collier County physicians are seeing an ever-growing critical need to have access for inpatient mental health care in our community. This is the right place and the right time for the central receiving facility to be built. We agree that it is the standard of care and the best practice for central receiving facilities to be in a centralized location that is easy to access and close to our 2 local healthcare systems. It would be ideal to be located on or near the campus of an existing, recognized, and expert mental health center, as proposed at the David Lawrence Center site. It is essential to honor the needs of our entire community by moving in a cost-effective and timely manner. Adhering to these standards of care provides for the best possible outcomes to assist all of those who deserve the full efforts of treatment and recovery. With the closing of NCH inpatient psychiatric unit, my colleagues are experiencing a growing census of patients who desperately need inpatient psychiatric care. The acute care hospitals do not have trained staff and programs to accommodate their needs. Current lack of access is resulting in patients spending more time in the acute care hospitals without specialized care, and this often necessitates their being transferred to other locations in Lee County and across the state to the East Coast, away from their support systems. Our patients are from diverse socioeconomic backgrounds, from the homeless to family members of affluent neighborhoods such as Port Royal. Mental health affects the entire Collier County community, and it includes a number of psychiatric illnesses and requires specialized medical attention, as does heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. Our patients deserve to be treated in an environment that is conducive to their healing. In the best interest of our community, we will appreciate your strong consideration of the healthcare needs of our neighbors, families, our friends, and vote yes to proceed with the current plans. Thank you, and I appreciate your consideration.
Mr. Chair, your final speaker before lunch is Linda McKinnon. I want to alert you that will leave us 65 more speakers after lunch.
Good afternoon. My name's Linda McKinnon. I'm the president and CEO of Central Florida Behavioral Health Network. We work under contract with the Department of Children and Families to assure a safety net of behavioral health services in all of our communities. I'm not going to repeat what everyone said. I would just really like to remind you that David Lawrence Center is already providing this vital and needed community service. They already act as a central receiving facility and have the crisis stabilization beds in place on that campus. Been there for 40 years. What we're looking at doing and need to do is to give them a state-of-the-art facility to care for your community. Without it, they will continue to be, and many times I get calls from Scott that they are over capacity. They have people having to sleep on mattresses on the floor because there are no other facilities. We also have in other areas of our network, for instance, Lee County, where we have a crisis stabilization unit that can't be open at this point in time because of the hurricane. We have a desperate, desperate need in our communities for these beds. David Lawrence has been providing this safely for a long time. This provides them with the means to do state-of-the-art work. And so I would just like to ask you again, please continue on this path and allow that the facility be built as planned. Thank you.
Okay, with that,